Welcome to Tonight in America. I'm your host, Don Terrius Jones. We have an exciting show tonight for you. It's good to be back with everyone on a Wednesday, October the 22nd, 2025. I know it's been a minute, everyone. Again, it hasn't been that long this time. Uh, I'm back now, finally. I was having some trouble with the internet the other day. That's why I didn't stream last night, but we finally got the stream back up. We're starting a little early today. Make sure the sound sounds good. All right, sounds good on my end on my phone. All right. So our two feature stories of the night, we're covering the Letitia James indictment, and we're also covering the John Bolton indictment. So both are both are important indictments. You know why they're important? Because these two right here were instrumental in going after Trump, basically in after his first term, especially Letitia James, because she made it her mission, running on as the 67th Attorney General of New York, running on going after Trump and indicting him and trying to get him incarcerated. So that one right there is very personal. And as we touched up in a previous episode about the John Bolton indictment, that one is also very vital itself. So today we're going to be covering those two right there, and tomorrow we're going to be covering Venezuela. You know, it's getting there's a lot of heating up in South America right now with this impending war with Venezuela because it seems like everything is every day is a new escalation in that region. That at some point we are going to go to war with Venezuela. Like I predict either around December or early January, we're going to have boots on the ground to commit to a regime change in Venezuela because that seems what this administration is on. They're on a mission to oust Venezuela's current ruler, Nicolas Maduro, and put in a puppet dictator or a puppet, democratic, uh, democratic president, as the West will put it, to better suit their narrative and to better suit what they want. I'm not happy about that, actually. I'm not for a regime change in Venezuela. I find it to be a waste of our time, considering that it seems Maduro is trying to actually work with the West, is actually trying to come to an agreement and understanding and come to a a conciliation. But it seems like to me, America is not, especially Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who has very much vendetta against Maduro and very much is on a mission to oust him as the ruler of Venezuela. And then also we're going to touch up a little bit more about the ceasefire in Gaza as well tomorrow. That is it's managed to hold, but not without its faults because this past Sunday, the Israelis accused Hamas of attacking and killing two of their soldiers, which resulted in them bombing some sections of Gaza, killing over a dozen Palestinians. So that seems like to me be a tricky, slippery slope right there because we don't know for sure if that's ever going to really hold. Because knowing the Israelis, they've broken so many ceasefires. It's Can you really trust them to actually keep to the word that they will not continue to slaughter? So I don't think I believe them at all. I don't really believe that the Israelis are going to keep the word and stop the slaughter. No, I believe that the slaughter is only going to continue at some point. It's only just a matter of time. So those are our big stories of tonight. So I want to welcome everyone. So like I said, I want to welcome everyone back on a Wednesday. Make sure you smash the like button, leave a comment on the video. Let me know how you feel about tonight's show. Oh, camera's acting stupid. Let me know how you feel about tonight's show. And yeah, so what else? Oh, big announcement. So if you go to the comments, if you go to like the description of this video, you see that we have a Patreon now. We have a Patreon now, and Well, there's a good reason for that. The reason why I created the Patreon now is because I'm not monetized by YouTube just yet. And since we got like what 63 subscribers so far and we're still growing more and more in numbers, I want to be able to uh get paid to do this. You know, that's part of the reasons why I'm so absent a little bit of times, because I actually have to like work, make some money, be able to cover my bills. So in order for me to be able to give you guys content at the rate that you guys want me to do, you guys got to be able to support the movement. So, like I said, you go down here. I'm gonna make a video about this tonight. I'm gonna upload it tomorrow, sponsoring the Patreon, and get you guys to come support the channel. That way, I could be independent and I can do this fully, and I don't have to worry about any other hurdles to stop me from being able to give you guys news every day without any distractions, without any worries in the world. Because remember, I'm not getting paid to do this right now. This is just a hobby. And unfortunately, I want to turn this hobby into a full on job. I want to be able to do this as a job, you know? So we'll also, and also, there's going to be some perks that are going to come with the Patreon too, as well. We're going to have some very exciting things in there for you guys, like merchandise, you know, possibly a group chat. You guys can conversate with me, get everyone together. We can have debates, whatever you guys want to do in the group chat. It's going to be a Telegram group chat. We're going to see all. There's going to be a tier list. Okay, you're going to have the regular, you're going to have the advanced, and you're going to have the ultra. The ultra is where you get the group chat and everything else. Uh, you get some perks when you do like the regular $5. If it's going to be five for regular, it's going to be 10 for advanced, and it's going to be 100 a year. But it's going to be 100 for the year, and you get a bunch of other things, including merchandise, exclusive merchandise that I'm going to be baking soon, along with a link to a group chat where only certain members can be able to join. So that's going to be very exciting for you guys. So if you guys want to be able to debate about politics in a group chat, you can you can join the ultra. So like I said, I'm gonna promote it. Gonna make a video about it tomorrow, and I'm going to promote the Patreon so you guys can start try to really support the cause. Besides just liking the video, rising us up in the algorithm, and also hitting the subscribe button. More subscribers, the more watch times we have, the more people we have in here, the more chances we have at growing. So, anyways, let's jump into our first story. We have Letitia James here. Letitia Ann Tish James, born October 18th, 1958, is an American lawyer and a politician serving since 2019 as the 67th Attorney General of New York, NYAG. Having won the 2018 election to succeed Barbara Underwood, a member of the Democratic Party, James is the first African American and first woman to be elected New York Attorney General. Cesspool in New York is what it is. Oh, we I think after tomorrow we cover a little bit of the Israel and Venezuela stuff. Look into. I'm gonna start reading about the Zoran Mondani stuff, about the New York mayoral elections that are coming up. I'm gonna probably start covering those too as well, because it's a big deal right now with the Zoran Mondani stuff, because everyone's got their eyeballs on this guy. That this guy right here, Zoran Mondani, is going to ruin New York, quote unquote. And I'm not a big fan of his. Of course, he's a socialist, and I don't believe in socialism or whatever. I mean, like, I can appreciate him not being a Zionist, but I mean, this guy is definitely not somebody I would never get behind, nor would I ever support. But we'll talk a little bit about Zoran Mondani. Maybe what today is, tomorrow's gonna be Thursday. Oh, Friday. We're gonna do it on Friday, and we're gonna start watching some documentaries or whatever too as well. We might do that on Patreon for you guys. I'm gonna start watching some especially some band documentaries. We can watch them on Patreon behind the paywall, so I ain't gotta worry about getting banned. All right, so born and raised in Brooklyn, James graduated from Lehman College in the Bronx before obtaining her uh, Juris Doctor degree at Howard University in Washington, D.C. She worked as a public defender, then on staff in the New York State Assembly, and later as a New York State Assistant Attorney General in Brooklyn Regional Office. James served as a member of the New York City Council from 2004 to 2013. He represented the 35th District, which includes the Brooklyn neighborhoods of Clinton Hill, Fort Greene, and parts of Crown Heights, Prospect Heights, and Bedford, believe, well, Belford. James chaired the committees on economic development and sanitation and served on several others. From 2013 to 2018, she was the New York City public uh, advocate, making her the first African American woman to be elected to and hold citywide office in New York City. James' office filed a civil suit against Donald Trump, key point, that resulted in penalties and a fine of more than $400 million. A divided appeals court upheld Trump's liability but voided the penalty as excessive. Both sides appealed to the New York Court of Appeals. James was briefly a candidate in the 2022 New York Gerber, uh, um, but suspended her campaign in 2021, opting to assist her run for re-election. Pretty much, it's just blah blah blah. On October 2025, James was federally indicted on one count of bank fraud and one count of making false statements to a financial institution. So as I got right here on my notepad right here, she was indicted. She was indicted. She was down on two counts. Count one, bank fraud, 18 USC 1344. Count two, false statements to a financial institution, 18 USC 1014. So as you can see, yeah, she's basically got handed down with the same thing that she was going after Trump with. She ran her entire campaign as running for New York Attorney General off on wanting to get Trump and nail him down in the courts and to prosecute him, basically. Of course, I mean, all the thing that happened to him was he had to pay fines that cost him millions of dollars. But Letitia James here literally committed mortgage fraud. That's how they were able to find a crime on her because Trump made an admission right now, and many people could disagree. Many people could not like exactly how he has ran his entire administration so far, especially when it pertains to all those in that he's advocated going after who have wronged him before in the past, who has came after him post his first term. Letitia James was one of the first ones that did this. So obviously Trump has got a vendetta to go after her, and he can't just make up a crime out the blue. She actually committed mortgage fraud. So she lied to the bank about a loan for a possible property that she was supposed to be living in, but instead turned that property into a rental unit for, I believe it was her niece, and that's how she it basically because of that she committed mortgage fraud. So we're gonna go over right here. This is from Axios, and I quote: New York AG Letitia James indicted for alleged bank fraud. New York Attorney General Letitia James was indicted on charges of bank fraud and making false statements to a financial institution by a federal grand jury in Virginia on Thursday, according to the Justice Department. Why it matters. It's the latest development in President Trump's long-running feud with James as he pursues retribution against political adversaries who pursued prosecutions against him during his first Washington White House term and in the years after. What they're saying, no one is above the law. U.S. Attorney Lindsey Holligan said in the news release announcing the indictment, the charges as alleged in this case, represent international criminal acts and tremendous breaches of the public trust, she said. The facts and the law in the case are clear, and we will continue following them to ensure that justice is served. The other side, this is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system, James said in a videotaped statement. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. Well, you did. She did run her entire campaign on going after Trump. So I mean, you kind of reap what you sow on this. You ran your entire campaign on becoming New York Attorney General by saying that you would prosecute Trump. So you're surprised now he's coming back after you. This decision to fire a United States attorney who refused to bring charges against me and replace them with someone who is blindly loyal not to the law but to the president is anecdotal to the bedrock principles of our country, she said. This is the time for leaders on both sides of the aisle to speak out against this blatant pers- pers- perversion of our system of justice. I'm reading this without my glasses. Context. The indictment comes after the U.S. Attorney Eric, I believe, Ebert, left his post under pressure from Trump after he failed to bring fraud charges against James and former FBI Director James Comey, who was indicted last month after Seabart's resignation. Trump called on Attorney General Pam Bondi to pursue charges against James and Comey in September 20th through social posts. Siebert was replaced with Halligan, Trump's personal attorney, who has no prosecutorial experience. Catch up quick. The Federal Housing Finance Agency wrote a criminal referral for James in April for allegedly falsifying bank statements to receive more favorable loan terms on a second home. Mm. So that right there is key point right here. So this is what they're going after her for right here. It's because of her taking a loan out for a property that she was supposed to be living in. The loan was supposed to be for a property that she allegedly was supposed to live in, but she ended up using that loan to buy a rental property, which is against the law. You can't really do that on the house and according to housing rules and regulations. So she broke the law by that, and the Trump administration found something that she actually did that was criminal, and now they're able to go after her and basically bring charges against her. So this happened in Norfolk, I mean, Virginia. What's inside? Count one alleges James knowingly tried to execute a scheme to defraud her loan servicer by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises. Count two alleges James knowingly made false statements that the Fernie property would be used as a secondary residence, when in truth, in fact, the property was intended and used as an investment property with no intended or actual personal occupancy or use by her. An indictment is an accusation, and James is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Let's go over to where the indictment is at right here. This is from the New York Times. So as you can see right here, count one, bank fraud, 18 USC 1344. Count two, false statements to a financial institution, 18 USC 1014. And this has come out the Eastern District of Virginia, the Norfolk Division. So this was came in October 2025, just this week. Okay, so as we go through here, we're not gonna read through all of this right quick. Let's go down here. So we're gonna find, as you can see right here. All right, so as you can see right here on the on the indictment right here, as I say right here, in this paragraph right here from 13 to 15, this talks about how she committed bank fraud, 18 USC. The allegations of paragraph 1 through 12 are realleged and incorporated herein from on or about October 7, 2020 through at least January 2024 in the Eastern District of Virginia and elsewhere. The defendant Letitia A. James did not only execute and attempt to execute a scheme and artifice and to defraud OMV Financial and First Savings Bank financial institutions and to obtain monies, funds, and credits owned by and under the custody and control of OVM Financial and the First Savings Bank by means of false and fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises. Just like you said in the Axios article right here. So this is how basically how she committed bank fraud right here, because she basically lied to the bank about her actual use of the loan, where in reality she was using the loan to go and purchase a rental property when she wasn't supposed to use the loan for that. It's against the law. And we're gonna have a video covering this from a lawyer, a very good one at that. His name's Nate. Nate the lawyer. He makes good videos talking about this stuff. All right, so the scheme involved falsely representing the. Well, this already pretty much just goes with the Axios. It's just a recount of what the Axios article says. So as you can see right here, false statements to a financial institution, count two. All right, so we go right down here on around where 17 is, from on or about July 28, 2020 through at least August 31, 2020 in the Eastern District of Virginia and elsewhere. The defendant Letitia A. James did not only make and cause to be made false statements and reports for the purpose of influencing the action of OVM Financial, a Fannie Mae backed lender, upon an application for the loan, in that James represented and affirmed in uniform residential loan application and related documents that the Pernay property would be used as a secondary residence. When in truth and in fact, as James then knew, the property was intended and used as an investment property with no intended or actual personal occupancy or use by her, in violation of Title 18 U.S. Codes, Section 1014. It's very short. It's not that long, so if you want to read through the whole thing, it's literally just like, I believe it's like what, 4 or 5 pages? Yeah, 4 or 5 pages, and the fifth page is just pretty much just right here. So this was how Lindsay Halligan was able to bring charges against her, because yeah, this is a crime. And like we're gonna get both sides from the aisle to see how everyone's reacting to like this indictment that was brought against her. Everyone, you got the left that's saying this is a waste of time of indictment, whatever. You got the right that says this is good. This is exactly good, because this woman's ran her entire campaign off on destroying Trump. So we got CNN, we got Fox. We're gonna get the left's point of view first, then we're gonna get the right's point of view.
I understand we have some legal breaking news.
Yeah, we have just learned that New York Attorney General Letitia James, who obviously brought the charges and won against President Donald Trump, has just been indicted by the Department of Justice.
Notice how she had to add in that little jab at Trump. It says Letitia James brought the indictment against Trump and won. Like, they just love throwing that little jab in at Trump, because Trump's always shit talking CNN. It says they're the worst network on the planet. They're fake news. Every time they're always having a press conference at the White House and CNN's always in attendance, Trump makes it his mission to just shit talk them every fucking day. So you guys get no views. You're fake news. And like, she had to literally throw that in there. That's crazy. The war between Trump and CNN, it should be made into a documentary someday.
justice. This was a case that President Trump wanted to be brought. It's a mortgage fraud case, and it's also what led to the leaving of the U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. Eric Siebert would not bring these charges. We heard he had reservations about bringing these charges, and instead he left that position, and President Trump handpicked Lindsey Halligan to serve as the U.S. attorney in that district. We saw Lindsey Halligan bring the case against James Comey, the former FBI director, to a grand jury. They also indicted. Now she has brought the case earlier today to a grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia against Letitia James. We don't have all the details of how many counts or which counts she might have been indicted on, but we have learned that the grand jury did vote to indict Letitia James as well. Again, this is yet another time, another person that President Trump has spoken about, both publicly and privately, who believed should be brought to a court of law, even though there were several attorneys who did not believe this mortgage fraud case was strong enough. Halligan, who is a Trump loyalist, ended up bringing the case herself, which is, of course, as we know, part of the reason that President Trump appointed her to this position. And the grand jury did indict Letitia James earlier today.
All right, this, of course, comes on the heels of the indictment and eventual arraignment of Jim Comey. Kristen, do stay with us. We're going to keep digging into this with our panel here in a moment. But I'd actually like to go back to Senator Slotkin from Michigan. And Senator, I realize you're learning the news of this right along with us. But, of course, this is a part of a bigger story of what's gone on in this second Trump administration. So what is your immediate reaction to this news that Letitia James has been indicted by a grand jury?
Yeah, well, obviously I haven't seen any of it. I'm just hearing it for the first time, but it just is part of a bigger trend of the President of the United States using the Department of Justice, using the legal system to go after political adversaries, using the arms of our democracy to go after political adversaries.
I love how they're just ignoring the fact that the Biden administration did the same thing with Trump, though. I mean, like, I for one, don't think this is a good thing to go after your political opponents. But then again, if they cast the first stone and then you're expected to just sit there and take it and not cast the stone back, then what did they expect was going to happen? They never thought Trump was going to get back in office. They never thought he was going to run again and that he was actually going to win. And the fact that he did win just goes to show you that, hey, these guys just didn't expect it to go down this way.
Whether it's Comey or now James, Lisa Cook on the Fed, Adam Schiff here in the Senate. And if that doesn't send a shiver down the spine of anybody, whether you're a Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, Adam Schiff is definitely next.
Because turnaround, I mean, another administration could be in and suddenly the arms of the government are being wielded against the Republican Party. It's just a broken way to do politics. It's corrupt. And I think that, anyone who cares about the Constitution and cares about our institutions surviving should care that the President of the United States is using Pam Bondi to do his bidding against adversaries.
Senator, this, of course, if it's related to this mortgage fraud question, which Kristen mentioned, would mean that some information that the government's in possession of, a Trump appointee over the Federal Housing Administration, is using that information to move forward with this. And obviously, you mentioned Lisa Cook. It's a similar issue in that particular case. What does using the government to do this mean, in your view?
Again, it is something that, I don't know if it's unprecedented in the history of our country, but I think most Americans understand that we have three branches of government. They're co-equal. And as our founding fathers set up, you shouldn't be able to sit in the White House and use the courts to get back at your enemies. And Democrats and Republicans, I've worked for them both in the White House, right? I worked for Obama, I worked for Bush, two different parties. But the idea that you would tell your, attorney general, I want to go after these people, just make a case against people I don't like because they annoyed me, they piss me off, they're from New York, so I pay a lot of attention to them. That to me is a dangerous, dangerous precedent to set. And again, even if you are not a Democrat and, you're a big supporter of President Trump, which a lot of people in my state are, I think people are smarter and they understand that if this is the new trend, what's going to happen when a Democrat's in power? What's going to happen against the people I care about? So it's a really, really dangerous, slippery slope.
Can I ask you what you're hearing from, when you go back to Michigan? I'm from Michigan originally. I'm sure there were voters there who voted for Donald Trump. They heard what he said on the campaign trail about retribution. Do you hear them telling you when you go home that they're on board with the way he's going about this? Is it registering with them at all? Or is there a level of concern, as you sort of allude to?
Yeah, I think it depends who you talk to. I will tell you the biggest thing that I hear from people is like, look, I voted for Donald Trump because he was going to put more money in my pocket and my costs have gone up and not down. That is for sure the prevailing theory. And, I had a guy, I was pumping gas, and a couple of Trump supporters next to me, they had the Trump sticker on their car. They pulled up, they were pumping gas. We were being very friendly. They recognized my face. And they said, I don't agree with the Democrats on this and on that. And, and they were clearly still very supportive of Donald Trump. And then they came back around after pumping gas, and he's like, yeah, but I didn't vote for this yo-yo crap on tariffs. I didn't vote for my prices to go up. So I think that's a sentiment that's certainly growing. But on the issues of democracy, there are certainly people, who, when they're being intellectually honest, say, it's not good for the country, these retributions, or I don't like the look of these raids that are going on in American cities, these ICE raids with people who are masked, that doesn't look like the America that I love and I know. But I'll tell you that costs are still by far the thing that people are paying attention to because it's in, your pocket, your kids, your life, more than anything that goes on in breaking news on the TV.
Fair enough. And
people got to stop it with these fucking like terrorists and shit. Like the terrorists are actually good. We need terrorists to bring back jobs back to America, to build shit again. Like I would want a country as great as America is to actually start bringing jobs back, and so people can actually have more opportunity to be able to land work in America, because we don't really build shit anymore. Now, I've already spoken about this already in a past stream, so I'm not going to regurgitate this too much. But like the average Joe doesn't understand shit about economics. Does not understand nothing. So I don't expect an average Joe to understand the economy as somebody who's saying a political commentator. And there's some dumbass political commentators too that don't understand the economy just as well. But really, to understand, so like I said, I don't really sit up here. I don't really care for I don't really care for like the average Joe's understanding of like economics, because like I said, that's just for more the political commentators. We understand the economy, the economics better, because we understand economics because we have to go out on a mic and talk about it and debate that idea. So that's why I said I don't really too much really care for I don't really care for none of this. I don't really care for like the average Republican's opinion about the economy and care about tariffs, because they don't even understand what tariffs are even are. So that's that. So this whole notion that CNN keeps running with the average American doesn't understand, like the average Trump supporter doesn't understand tariffs, that I didn't vote for tariffs. Yes, you did. You want to bring jobs back to America, don't you? Then support the tariffs. Now they could be implemented a little bit better, but the point of the matter is tariffs are still good for the general public. It's still good for America as a whole. So
And it's always very, very interesting. I really appreciate you giving us a window into that, because it's not always easy to see it from here in Washington as it is when you all get to go back home. To circle back to what we're talking about here with Letitia James, I take your point about the three branches of government. Republicans that I talk to will point to Letitia James and how she went about doing things as perhaps slightly different than the federal Department of Justice. She's obviously elected, right? It's a different system. And she did talk about going after Donald Trump in a way that a lot of Republicans felt was kind of a blanket way, essentially saying, I will look for anything I can find on him. You're someone who thinks a lot about the country in a way that's not always the partisanship that we are used to here in D.C. Do you see anything problematic with the way Letitia James conducted herself that could potentially have caused Republicans to have the level of mistrust in the system that they clearly had?
I can't speak to the individual cases and the things that she particularly brought up. I'm not well educated on the actual legal documents. But I will say we have a legal standard for things, right? You shouldn't just be able to say, well, I don't like Jim, so I'm going to launch an investigation and I'm going to go prosecute against Jim. There's a legal standard that you have to prove in our courts before someone can be, put through the system. And I think those standards.
These people don't realize that, yeah, she committed mortgage fraud. Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that that's obviously what she did, honestly speaking. And then like the banks actually they verified that this is the case, that she did commit mortgage fraud. So this whole notion that CNN thinks this is a bogus ass case to bring against her, regardless of what they feel like this is a bogus case or not, yeah, she committed mortgage fraud. So I mean, that is a liable. Now, as far as if she's going to do jail time or whatever, that's left up to the courts. I don't know for sure she's going to do jail time or not, but for sure John Bolton's definitely going to do jail time. He's already got his rights read, because like right or left doesn't like John Bolton. And James Comey, there's some serious cases he might be doing some time too, because there's some indication that he has lied before, which he's always known, that he did leak the information to the press about him possibly investigating Trump for possible election interference from Russia, which I'm not. I mean, come on, James Comey is this damn snake. So, but yeah, for CNN to keep blatantly sitting up here and saying this crap, she committed mortgage fraud. Like, people have to understand it. Like, yeah, it's not that serious of a crime, but then again, she owes a lot of money she owes the money to the banks, and quite frankly, she's a deceitful person. But to sit up here and act like she did nothing wrong, it's insane.
Should apply whether you are a Democrat or Republican, whether you're in New York or DC or Michigan or Kansas. And that to me is the only thing that keeps our system surviving. It can't be about personalities. It has to be about a legal standard that we all have to meet. So the proof should be in the pudding. If there's things that have been launched against Donald Trump and they're thin and there's nothing there and they're more political than they are factual, well then it shouldn't survive the gauntlet of getting into our system. Same thing for Donald Trump and his attorney general. If there's no there, and some of the cases that we've started to see against the political enemies of Donald Trump, they are thin as hell. So that, to me, I'm not a lawyer, but there should be a legal standard, and whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you got to meet that standard.
All right, Senator Letitia Slotkin, I really appreciate your time. I do hope you'll come back and we can talk about healthcare and the government shutdown if that's still winding around next week. I know that's what we had originally set out to do, but I appreciate your role with the breaking news. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, our panel's back and we're joined by Elliot Williams, our attorney in residence. So sorry, thank you very much for being here. Obviously, we're just learning some of the details here, but of course, we saw what happened with Jim Comey. Now we're learning a grand jury has indicted Letitia James in federal court. What say you?
Yeah, I think if someone broke the law.
I'm never going to change the title of this video from just covering the news and late night stream to indictments handed out by the Trump administration. So we're going to have to change. I would change the title of the stream after I'm finished.
Knowingly committed mortgage fraud or whatever else, they ought to be investigated, prosecuted, and go to jail for it. That's a basic fact of our system. I think the president's own statements have undermined the seriousness of any prosecution here. And quite frankly, not unlike the Jim Comey case, if she is to go ahead and, if she's charged with a crime, moves to have it dismissed for selective prosecution or malicious prosecution, she can actually point to Jim Comey's case and say, now look, there is a pattern of the Justice Department indicting opponents of the president by the president's own statements that suggest that, I mean, it's really my case, but we collectively would not have been singled out and prosecuted but for the president's own statements. So, if this case doesn't succeed, the president really has no one to blame but himself for going on the record as much as he has in the way that he has by specifically saying, I want these people targeted and I want them to go to jail.
All right, that's the left's point of view. Now let's go to CNN and see what they have to say.
This is not simply an attack on Attorney General Tish James. This is an attack on our city. This is a blatant miscarriage of justice.
Breaking today, New York City's Democrat Socialist mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani backing New York Attorney General Letitia James after a federal grand jury indicted her.
Like I said, we're going to talk about Zohran Mamdani on Friday.
On charges of bank fraud. Prosecutors say she falsely claimed a Virginia rental property as a second home to secure better loan terms. James denies any wrongdoing. Fox News contributor and constitutional law attorney Jonathan Turley joins us now. Do you see anything wrong with what you did, Jonathan? Welcome.
Well, I don't remember Mamdani coming out and denouncing James when she ran for office on the pledge to nail Donald Trump for something, not even specifying what it might be, or when she charged him in a fraud case where no one lost money. And in fact, the banks wanted additional loans from Trump and his organization. None of these people were objecting to any of that lawfare. Now, does that mean that this is a lead pipe cinch of a case or that there's not problems? Of course not. This is going to be a tough case for the Department of Justice to be able to land. While they got this case out of New York, it's in a very blue district in Virginia. And also, there's going to be some threshold challenges here. And one of them has some merit. It doesn't mean it's going to prevail. James is likely to say that the acting U.S. attorney who signed off on these charges was not appropriately appointed and therefore should not have held that office. And if that is the case, then the indictment would go down.
Well, to the overall case itself, though, I want to rewind the clock back to February 16th of last year, when Letitia James really was, I guess, for lack of a better word, bragging about the fact that she was trying to hold Donald Trump to account, saying, quote, when powerful people cheat to get better loans, it comes at the expense of hardworking people. Everyday Americans cannot lie to a bank to get a mortgage. And if they did, our government would throw the book at them. They simply can't.
That's just so hypocritical on our part. That is so hypocritical. So, because she was running on that to nail Donald Trump on something, and she nailed him on the exact same thing of what she's getting accused of, like Liberty mortgage fraud, bro. That is so hypocritical on our part.
Cannot be different rules for different people. It's a little ironic, I think, in hindsight.
Well, John, what's really ironic is she just asked for $500 million of damages against Trump in a case where no one lost any money. In fact, the bank made money. In this case, the government's alleging that she made serious money, that by misrepresenting the status of this property, she made thousands of dollars. And so, unlike her case, they can actually cite to money that ended up benefiting her. Now, does that mean that they can make this case with an entire jury in Northern Virginia? I think the odds still favor James. There's also a good chance that this technicality that she's likely to raise could delay the case. The argument is that the president has 120 days to assign an acting U.S. attorney, but he had already used that period with her predecessor. And there's also a suggestion that the reason that predecessor was let go or forced out is that he was not going to sign off on this prosecution. So it's going to get very messy very fast in this case.
Jonathan, we'll finish off with on whether this is a political retribution on the part of President Trump. This is A.G. Bondi taking a question on that, on whether Trump was pressuring the DOJ to go after his enemies, including James Comey. Listen.
President Trump is the most transparent president in American history. And I don't think he said anything that he hasn't said for years. Comey was indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia by, I may point out, one of the most liberal grand juries in the country.
Get a last thought from you on that, Jonathan.
Well, both Comey and James are likely to make two claims, vindictive prosecution, selective prosecution. Those are very difficult claims to make in court. They will be citing President Trump in that posting of his, complaining that why haven't you indicted these people? And that is going to be the central piece of evidence they use to try to make out those claims.
But how different is that, Professor, than Tish James campaigning on, I'm going to get Trump?
It's not different, but the question is whether they will be able to prevail now in federal court. James went to New York court and got a very favorable judge. We'll see how this plays out. But those types of cases, and I've made those types of arguments in court as a criminal defense attorney, they are very hard to make. Judges do not like to look at motivations if there is an otherwise valid crime in the indictment.
Jonathan Turley on all of that for us. Good to see you. Thank you.
New York's top prosecutor is now facing her own legal battle. A federal grand jury indicted New York Attorney General Letitia James yesterday on a bank fraud charge following a Justice Department investigation. James, if you remember, had prosecuted President Trump in a massive civil case. She ran her campaign largely on a promise to prosecute the president. Senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy with more. Hey, Peter.
Julie, good morning. Just like we saw with James Comey a few weeks ago, when a prominent Trump critic gets indicted, one of the first things that they do is record a video and post it to social media, just like Tish James, now accused of mortgage fraud. Here.
These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost. The president's actions are a grave violation of our constitutional order and have drawn sharp criticism from members of both parties.
Attorney General James is not letting a good indictment go to waste, raising money with this email blast. We must show right now that the American people reject this dangerous political revenge campaign. I'm calling for 20,000 rapid response donations today to send an unmistakable message: we won't back down. Will you rush a donation? And she's got top Democrats with her.
Also, let me know in the comment section if there's anything going on with any of the ICE protests and stuff like that. I might check in later in the video if we got enough time to see. Might watch some little ICE, crack some heads or whatever. Like I said, this is just our regular scheduled program this week. So this is our regular scheduled program right now. Nothing else of any sorts is going on. It's kind of a slow news week. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it's a slow news week. So I'm just getting caught up on all the news that I missed from last week. And then once we're caught up, if nothing else exciting happens, we might just watch some documentaries, watch some cop shootings, whatever. But tomorrow, like I said, I'm gonna upload a video that's gonna cover my Patreon. I'm gonna advertise the Patreon just to give you guys a reminder. There's a Patreon right now. Click the description of this video. There's going to be a Patreon link. You click the link, and then you're going to have a tier list of which Patreon tier you want. You got regular, $5. You got advanced, $10. You got ultra, $100 a year. You're going to have perks and whatever. I will go over that at the end of the video again to remind everyone all the perks that you get from joining the Patreon.
I just spoke with Tish James, and this is what tyranny looks like. Donald Trump has turned the Justice Department into his personal attack dog to go after his political enemies. This is tyranny. This is outrageous.
Yeah,
Since coming back to office, President Trump has insisted that prosecutorial decisions about who to indict and who not to indict are handled entirely outside of his control and by the Justice Department. President Trump has not spoken about this yet. He did not talk on his way to Walter Reed for his physical, but we'll see him later. Julie?
All right, Peter Doocy live at the White House. Thank you very much. It's a busy place there today.
Well, New York Attorney General Letitia James has been indicted on charges of banking fraud and making false statements to a financial institution. James and her fellow Democrats say the prosecution is politically motivated, citing her 2020 lawsuit against President Trump. James released this video statement yesterday. Watch.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system. He is forcing federal law enforcement agencies to do his bidding, all because I did my job as the New York State Attorney General. These charges are baseless, and the president's own public statements make clear that his only goal is political retribution at any cost.
Let's bring in Paul Morrow, attorney, retired NYPD inspector and Fox News contributor. Okay, so we know this doesn't surprise us that she would come out and say this, obviously, and that Democrats are going to use this as a political, talking point. But doesn't this case have teeth?
It does, and I have to tell you that all you need to do is read the indictment to see that it does, because it's a very simple, plain-spoken indictment, which is crucial in a financial case, because in financial cases they can get very complicated. You could potentially lose the jury. This one doesn't have that. Now, to clear something up, the primary residence issue is not here. That was the initial allegation we all heard about from the power of attorney form. What it comes down to is the following. She signed the operative paperwork to get the loan, saying that the house in Virginia is going to be a second house, not an investment property, a second house for her to go to herself. She's not allowed to have somebody there renting it. Okay, that's how she gets the loan. She then takes her paperwork for her taxes and puts on her tax forms that it is an investment property and, in fact, has write-offs relative to the investment property. So internally, it's inconsistent by her own paperwork. By getting the lower rate for a non-investment property, she saved about $19,000 to this point. That is the crux of the allegation.
Okay, and so here's a senator from Michigan, Alyssa Slotkin. This is what she told CNN on Thursday.
Just as part of a bigger trend of the President of the United States using the Department of Justice, using the legal system to go after political adversaries, using the arms of our democracy to go after political adversaries. It's just a broken way to do politics.
I wonder what you think about that, because
nobody said that at the beginning when Letitia James went after Trump for the same thing.
Yeah, pretty
Exactly.
rich. When you
My
consider the
point
fact that
exactly.
That was her promise in coming into office as the Attorney General, that she was going to be using her office to go after Donald Trump, which is really not her remit as supposedly the top law enforcement officer in New York. And let's recognize something else. She also got through, it had to be for her sake, through Albany, a $10 million fund for anybody who has federal government coming after them for what they've done on the job and off the job, anybody that's been targeted. So she's saying she hasn't accessed that fund yet. $10 million. She's got a high-priced lawyer, Abby Lowell. I have a feeling the citizens of New York are going to be paying for Abby Lowell's swimming pool. So that $10 million is sitting there waiting for her to access it. The legislature put it through. The governor, Kathy Hochul, signed off on it. But here's the thing. The stakes for her are very high here because they're not going to plead this out. And if she gets convicted on a felony, which this is, she loses her law license and she has to step down. Essentially, she's going to be unemployable in public life in New York.
I want to go down to Jersey really quickly here. We've got this crazy governor's race. It's getting very, very heated, and there was a big debate last night. Jack Ciattarelli says he's going to sue his opponent, Mikey Sherrill, over this comment. Let's listen.
But New Jersey doesn't know as much about his business, how he made his millions, by working with some of the worst offenders and saying that opioids were safe, putting out propaganda. Tens of thousands of New Jerseyans died. And as if that wasn't enough, then he was paid to develop an app so that people who are addicted could more easily get access to opioids. And so as he made millions, as these opioid companies made billions, tens of thousands of New Jersey.
All right, so we're going to go over here to Nate, the lawyer, who's going to give you a detailed case. Who's got two videos, actually, so... This one was 8 days ago. Okay, so we're going to watch this one. Then we're going to watch the second one over here that he did on Letitia James. He's got two videos that he did about her, giving you a good breakdown of this case to better explain you how mortgage fraud works. Well, this video right here, too, that was done 8 days ago, is going to give you a better explanation of how mortgage fraud is done.
Breaking news on News Nation. Letitia James, the New York State Attorney General, has just been indicted on a federal fraud charge, indicted in the Eastern District of Virginia. One count of mortgage fraud after an investigation is what we're hearing.
We are following this breaking news. The clerk of the Court of Eastern Virginia says a grand jury has indicted New York Attorney General Letitia James.
I understand we have some legal breaking news.
Yeah, we have just learned that New York Attorney General Letitia James, who obviously brought the charges and won against President Donald Trump, has just been indicted by the Department of Justice.
Okay, if you're watching this video, I'm going to lay out the evidence against Letitia James. I'm going to lay out her defenses, and you are going to come to the decision whether she's going to be found guilty of these charges or whether this is a whole nothing burger. Here's a quick message from the sponsor of this video, Crypto.com. Let's be clear, cryptocurrency isn't coming. It's already here. And this next Crypto.com. And Crypto.com to do your own research before investing. Now, back to the matters. Okay, so first let's start off with the indictment. We got one count of bank fraud in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 1344, and count two are false statements to a financial institution in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 1014. Now, in this document, the federal government is alleging that Letitia James committed a specific type of mortgage fraud, known as occupancy fraud.
I wanted to do a video about occupancy fraud because it's the #1 fraud in the mortgage industry. This means people will say that they're going to live in a home so they can get the primary residence interest rate, which is much lower than the investment property interest rate. But really their intention is to rent it out. Also, on a primary residence, you can get that loan with a much smaller down payment, sometimes as little as 5% down, whereas on a rental property, you need 20% down or more. So people will, shocker, lie, and that's a fraud, and that's a big deal. This is what underwriting is for. Our underwriters, everybody's underwriters are looking for any kind of fraud, and it's enough that it's the #1 fraud in the industry, and it's enough that it's something that's always looked for.
Now, the government shows some exhibits to prove its case. First, this specific power of attorney signed on the 17th day of August 2023 by Letitia James. And to make sure this was Letitia James, this was notarized with 2 witnesses. Now, shockingly enough, those 2 witnesses actually worked in the Attorney General's office of the city of New York, which is unbelievable. And this document states, quote, I hereby declare that I intend to occupy this property as my principal residence. What property are we talking about? We're talking about the purchase of the property known as 604 Sterling, Norfolk, Virginia, 23505. Then the government provides Exhibit B, which...
When I was watching this video, when I realized that, yes, it was her signature along with two notary signatures also as well, and then the fact that it says on these documents right here she intended to use the property as her main occupancy, bro. That they looked hard. They didn't have to look too hard and good to find something to charge her with. Like this type of mortgage fraud, like it was just explained earlier in the video, is the #1 mortgage fraud. It's #1, and she basically like. How dumb is this woman to even do this? Bro.
Is the deed of trust. Now, when you look at page 6 of 11, it defines what occupancy means.
So the deed of trust deals with occupancy. And here's what you're actually committing to. Borrower shall occupy, establish, and use the property as the borrower's principal residence within 60 days after execution of the security instrument, and shall continue to occupy the property as the borrower's principal residence for at least 1 year after the date of occupancy. And then here's the crucial part. Unless lender otherwise agrees in writing, which consent shall not be unreasonably withheld, or unless extenuating circumstances exist which are beyond the borrower's control.
Now, just to break this down, if you're going to live in a home, you're going to get favorable loan terms. If you're not going to live in a home or are going to use it as rental property, you're going to have to pay more money. So the indictment, paragraph 8, alleges, quote, this misrepresentation allowed James to obtain favorable loan terms not available for investment properties, including a note rate of 3%, avoiding a 0.815 higher comparable investment property rate of 3.815.
Now let's go over that right quick. Let's go over to the indictment right here. Like he says right here, this is right here on paragraph 8 of the indictment. This misrepresentation allowed James to obtain a favorable loan terms not available for investment properties, including a note rate of 3,000%, avoiding a 0. Well, I would just say 3%. I believe is how you, yeah, avoiding a 0.815% higher comparable investment property rate of 3.815%, resulting in approximately $17,837 in rate savings over the life of the loan. A seller credit of approximately $3,288, exceeding the seller credit for investment properties by approximately $1,096, for a total ill-gotten gains of approximately $933 over the life of the loan. Wow, man. This is incredibly dumb on her part. That is just incredibly dumb.
Resulting in approximately $17,837 in rate savings over the life of the loan. A seller credit note rate of 3% terms. If you're not going to live in a home or are going to use it as rental property, you're going to have to pay more money. So the indictment, paragraph 8, alleges, quote, this misrepresentation allowed James to obtain favorable loan terms not available for investment properties, including a note rate of 3%, avoiding a 0.815
3%. Not bad, chat.
Higher comparable investment property.
Not 3,000. I thought it was a slash at first. So that's a dot. Okay, so it's 3%. So she has 3% avoiding of 0.815% higher comparable investment property rate of 3.815%. Wow. Yeah, this woman is cooked.
Property rate of 3.815.
She's definitely going to get a felony. She's definitely going to be a felon after this. She's not going to do jail time for obvious reasons, but she's definitely going to receive a felony and lose her license to be able to be Attorney General of New York. So she won't be able to have a job. She's going to be jobless, but basically speaking, bro, karma just comes back around in many different ways, especially for Letitia James, who ran her entire campaign on going after Trump. And now it's like, you know, basically it's come full circle back to her now. Because now she's getting hit with the same thing she got Trump hit with.
Resulting in approximately $17,837 in rate savings over the life of the loan. A seller credit of approximately $3,288, exceeding the seller credit for investment properties by approximately $1,096, for a total ill-gotten gains of approximately $18,933 over the life of the loan. Now, one thing that usually hampers a fraud case is that you have to intend to commit the fraud. It can't just be by an accident. And the government has some real interesting evidence that this was no accident. This was fraud. For instance, the government said in paragraph 9 that James' universal property application for homeowners insurance indicated owner-occupied non-seasonal use, further misrepresenting the intended use of the property, essentially making it seem like she was going to live there when she wasn't. Now, paragraph 10 shows you how dumb the New York AG was, because remember, she couldn't rent out the property because if she did rent out the property, she would have to pay a higher loan rate. So she said that she wasn't going to rent out the property and she was going to live there herself. But then on her own tax file, she said that she got thousands of dollars of rent received from the property and even claimed deductions for expenses related to the property. So let me break this down so we can know exactly what the government has and what they're saying about Letitia James before we get into her defense. 1, she claimed that the Norfolk home was her secondary residence and that she was going to live there for better loan terms. 2, she signed a second home rider promising that she was going to live there, which she didn't. 3rd, she actually rented the property out to tenants after telling the bank that she wasn't going to rent it out to tenants. 4, then she reported rental income on her own tax returns from the property that she couldn't actually rent. 5, she told the insurance company that it was a owner-occupied home to get a better insurance rate. So it looks like Letitia James has a major problem because all this documentary evidence makes it look like she may be in trouble for some fraud. So now Letitia James and her attorneys have responded to some of these allegations, so I'm going to play you her response and what her defense is likely to be. Now, just to be clear, Letitia James concedes that this property in Virginia is not her primary residence and never has been.
The key allegation, again, it sounds like you don't want to address them here, but I'm just going to put it out so people understand that a property that was owned in Virginia, a mortgage that you signed, if I'm not mistaken, for that property, that they say you falsely represented yourself as a resident of Virginia, and that was essentially amounts to mortgage fraud since you're a resident of New York. What is your response to that?
It's baseless. Everybody knows I'm a resident of New York, specifically Brooklyn. And again, we will respond at the appropriate time in the appropriate way to these baseless allegations. And some media outlets like the Daily News over the weekend has indicated as much.
That's all you want to say?
That's all that I'm going to say.
Now, Letitia James' attorney also wrote a letter to the DOJ responding to the mortgage fraud allegations. In that letter, she does say here that it was mistakenly stated that the property would be Ms. James' principal residence. She also goes on and she made a, quote, very clear and all-cap statement 2 weeks earlier to the mortgage loan broker that, quote, this property will not be my primary residence. And she attached the email and the Section 5 declaration, which says, will you occupy the property as your primary residence? And it's checked no. She also attached another email from the day before where she asked the loan broker straight out, where's the form that indicates this property is not my primary residence? I cannot find it.
So now the problem with these documents is that they are from 2023 as the date here in the emails indicate. But if we go back to the indictment, the loan was acquired or assigned to First Savings Bank in March of 2021, 2 years earlier. So we're talking about something that happened in 2021. And she's saying, hey, in 2023, I told the bank I actually wasn't living there.
Now, if these documents are to be believed, it shows that her intent was not to list the Virginia residence as her primary residence. Now, where does this leave us? Well, for the government to sustain charges of criminal mortgage fraud, the government must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Letitia James knowingly made false statements to induce a financial institution to lend her this money. Now, obviously, the government is going to show the sworn documents with 2 witnesses where she signed saying that she intended this property to be her primary residence as proof that she intentionally tried to induce the financial institution to lend her money at favorable rate.
Now, this, along with the other evidence in the document, clearly is enough to establish probable cause that a crime had been committed and that Letitia James is the one that committed this particular crime.
But when looking at the full context, you do have these other declarations that clearly show that Letitia James made it very clear that she didn't want to even make it seem that she lived in the property in Virginia. Quote, will you occupy the property as your primary residence? She checked no. Then she even sent an email to the loan broker who was putting together the paperwork to also say, where's the form that indicates that property is not my primary residence? I can't find it. Now remember, the government's burden here is beyond a reasonable doubt, and you have to demonstrate that this was willful misconduct.
Letitia James is going to claim this was a mistake. I didn't intend to defraud anyone, even with all this evidence the government has presented.
Now why is that important? Because if this is generally just a mistake where you have all these conflicting documents, then you will not be able to prove the willful misconduct piece of it, and she would not be able to be convicted.
I will respond to these baseless allegations at the appropriate time and in the appropriate way, but I am 100% confident that it will not result in any criminal indictment or action against me.
Now, obviously, they're not baseless because you do have a document that she signed with 2 witnesses in front of a notary that essentially says, I will be a primary resident of Virginia. So that makes the case not baseless.
But now I leave it up to you, my wonderful audience. Do you think Tish James is going to jail? I right now put it at 60-40. I think the government has a pretty strong case. Tish James' excuses seem to be years later in 2023, but the government is saying, hey, we're talking about a loan you took out in 2020 and 2021. So like I said before, let me know in the comment section, but I think Tish James has a serious problem.
Now, if you like this type of content, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, do all the great YouTube stuff. My name is Nate the Lawyer, and these are the facts. Don't let anybody fool you. Peace.
All right, so we're going to watch this other video.
All right, I had to do this video because there's so much confusion with the actual facts for Letitia James' indictment. It's insane. So in my last video, I think I added to that confusion by not properly laying out exactly what's going on in this case. So this is going to be a boring video, but it's going to lay everything out.
All right, so we're going to get into his second video explaining exactly how this mortgage fraud works. So, oh man. All right, so get your popcorn ready, get your energy drink, get your coffee, whatever you're drinking to use to give you some caffeine, and we're going to jump right into it right now.
All right, I had to do this video because there's so much confusion with the actual facts for Letitia James' indictment. It's insane. So in my last video, I think I added to that confusion by not properly laying out exactly what's going on in this case. So this is going to be a boring video, but it's going to lay everything out clearly. Now, the New York AG has taken out 3 mortgages for 3 different properties, and each one of those mortgage applications has false statements. So first, there are 3 separate properties that we're dealing with when we're talking about mortgage fraud. The first property we're going to talk about is the Brooklyn, New York multifamily unit. Now, this brand house in Brooklyn, Letitia James claimed to be a 4-unit property, but NYC records show the unit as a 5-unit property. Now, the difference between 4 units and 5 units is that 4 units and below are considered residential properties, giving you more favorable loan rates. 5 units and above are considered commercial properties, so you got to pay more on your loans. So by saying a 5-unit property is 4-unit property, you are saving thousands of dollars on interest. And next, on some of her filings, she listed her father as her spouse and not her father.
Letitia James has said that her father was her husband for the purpose of, misstating allegedly her information on these mortgage forms. So
now, it's important to note that none of these discrepancies has anything to do with the current indictment. Now, next we have a property in Virginia, and I'm going to call that the Sterling Street property, and that was purchased in 2023. Now, this is a property where Letitia James claimed that this was her primary residence. Now, the document was signed by 2 witnesses, and Letitia James attested to this claim. There were also a whole bunch of other documents in which Letitia James also claimed that this was her primary residence. Letitia James did email her loan broker and the company saying, hey, this is not my primary residence, as she puts in this email dated 2023. And on top of that, she also filled out some of the loan forms, making it very
very clear that this was not her primary residence. Now, since the government has to prove this was willful, it's going to be almost impossible for the government to prove Letitia James willfully tried to defraud the bank when she's obviously telling the bank and the bank's officers that, hey, this is not going to be my primary residence. So this would easily be chalked up to a mistake. And just so we're all clear, she was not indicted for any of these actions. Now, let's move to the third property concerning Letitia James, which is another property in Norfolk, Virginia, the subject of the current indictment. Now, this loan originated in the year 2020. Now, on the loan application, Letitia James claimed that this property was a secondary residence. She also signed a second home rider promising to occupy the unit and not rent it. That's what the indictment alleges. Here, on paragraph 6, under a signed second home rider, which required James, as the sole borrower, to occupy and use the property as her secondary residence, and prohibited its use as a timeshare or other shared ownership arrangement or agreement that requires her either to rent the property or give any other person any control over the occupancy or use of the property. So, by signing that second home rider, she couldn't rent the property. And more importantly, she said she was going to occupy the residence. Now, because Ms. James said that she was going to use this property as a second residency, that allowed her to get more favorable loan rates. Now, paragraph 8 lays out the benefit that James got for listing the property as a secondary residence and not a rental property. And that benefit came out to about $18,000. The indictment also says that the universal property application for the homeowner's insurance indicated, quote, owner-occupied non-seasonal use, further misrepresenting the intended use of the property. Now, to make it even more clear that even though James had listed this property as a secondary residence that she was going to occupy, she actually filed a tax return claiming that she never occupied the property. In paragraph 10 of the indictment, it says here that she reported 0 personal days use. She also received $1,000 in rental income and claimed deductions for expenses related to the property. And she received this loan in March of 2021. Now, Tish James offenders are pointing to this email in which Tish James, in section 5, which is declarations, it says, quote, will you occupy the property as your primary residence? And she puts no. But this email is dated 2023. And this is in reference to the Sterling property we talked about earlier, which she took the loan out in 2023. This is not about the loan in the indictment, which is from 2021. Here is a secondary email that the Tish James offenders are also going to be pointing to, where she says here, and this property will not be my primary residence. But again, this is about the 2023 property and not the loan in 2021. Now, you're going to see a lot of YouTubers and a lot of conservatives pointing to this document, claiming that, hey, look, she signed under penalty of perjury. But this document has nothing to do with the indictment. It does show that there were some issues in the future, but in terms of the indictment that is on the table now, this document is irrelevant to that. Okay, so now let's go over some strengths and weaknesses of the government.
Interesting. So Nate's saying that that document has nothing to do with the indictment at all. Interesting. So Nate's giving a different layer to this Letitia James case at all. Like I said, I'm open to both sides of the perspective right now. I've already got it from the jump that, yeah, there's this one, I don't really believe she's doing no jail time. Now, of course, she is probably going to get a felony charge. She's going to be labeled a felon by the end of this. That's what I predict. So I don't predict Letitia James is going to jail at all. No, not as much as the James Comey and John Bolton case. I'm more on the lines of believing those ones have strong credibility to them. The Letitia James ones is not it's not something as serious. Like, she's probably just gonna get a slap on the wrist and probably just get hit with felony charges. That's about it.
Current indictment. First, there is a clear paper trail of contradictions. Secondary residence, home rider, tax returns, showing rental income, clarifying that she never used it for personal use. Also, this case is very easy to explain to a jury. She said she lived there, but she rented it instead. She didn't tell anybody, and she saved about $19,000. It's not that complex. Now, if the court allows in the evidence of the other properties and their issues, that may also strengthen the government's case, but it is very unlikely the issues with the Brooklyn house or the issues with the other Virginia house will be able to be brought in front of this court because there's a bar to propensity evidence, so the jury will probably never likely hear about those other issues. What are some good arguments that could work for Tish James? Well, intent. Intent is the hardest thing for the government to prove in a fraud case. And I assume Tish James's defense is going to be, I generally intended to use this as a second home, but my plans changed later. That could create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jury. Now, generally in the United States, poor judgment or changed intent isn't enough for the government to prove that you intended to deceive at the time the statements were made. So in this case, if James intended to move into the property, she can show that through some emails or whatever she has, and then plans change. She said, well, we'll just rent it out. That would be enough to save her from a guilty verdict. Now, I got into the politics here. The left are saying these are trumped up charges, political prosecution, and there's nothing to see here. The evidence doesn't amount to something that you would even indict someone for. Here's CNN essentially saying that.
But if you look at the numbers here, the total purchase amount of the home was $130,000 plus. The amount of the mortgage was just over $100,000. And the indictment says the total amount she profited was $18,000. Let me tell you, I have seen dozens upon dozens of federal mortgage fraud cases brought. I've never seen one for that low of a loss amount.
And you have some others on the other side saying this case is ironclad and she's obviously guilty, but only time will tell. So now the Democrats are defending Letitia James like insane stuff. Here is what CNN says. Everybody commits mortgage fraud. Everybody is a thief.
Aside for a second, what Tish James, and again, we're still getting the details, but if it's related to this mortgage issue, I mean, this is something that everyone in America, or many people at least, if you're lucky enough to be able to buy a house in America, you deal with this, right? The federal government doesn't go after all of these people for doing this.
So essentially, CNN is saying everyone speeds, so no one should get a speeding ticket. But when it was on the other side, it was okay to get President Trump because, hey, even though everybody's doing it, we're concerned about this one guy doing it. So it's all BS. But with all that said, it's up to you now. What do you think? Do you think she's got some issues? Do you think this is going to be easy? Let me know. My name is Nick the Lawyer. I'm out. Peace.
Yeah, that's the left is always, bro, the left is a party of like encouraging bad behavior, encouraging violence and stuff like that. That's just crazy to me. They literally said this like, basically, yes, the analogy he used was just like, yeah, if everyone speeds, people on the left speed and people on the right speed, so everyone should be speeding. You know, not a big it's not a big deal that everyone speeds. You know, that's just kind of a dumb analogy, because like she did commit mortgage fraud. Now, of course, the gaps could probably be filled in come her trial day. I believe so, but I mean, look, she'll have a day in court or whatever to basically prove her innocence and prove that, hey, I changed my mind midway before me moving into the Virginia property. I changed my mind and instead wanted it to be rented out instead of me using it as my main occupation. That's a possibility of it. Like I said, there's a possibility of that, but this one right here is the weaker ones of all the other indictments that Trump has brought against, especially against James Comey and John Bolton, like I mentioned. So those ones are a little bit more stronger in my opinion, especially John Bolton's. His is way stronger. Letitia's is not as strong, but I mean, like I said, she's gonna probably get she's not gonna probably do jail time, but she's gonna probably definitely be getting hit with felonies. So, and if she is a felon, she loses her job. She's no longer the New York Attorney General. She can't take the position as a felon. So she's gonna be jobless.
Of the state of New York, Letitia James, she's the chief law enforcement officer.
So we're going over to Victor Davis Hanson. This is Daily Signal.
The Attorney General of the state.
He's going to give over here why he, like he's basically making the argument that this is not Trump's revenge tour, that this is just basically Letitia James' own doing, which this is technically her own doing. The fact that now she has to try to kind of clear up this, the air that, hey, I didn't intend it to, oh, hold on one second. I had a clip to just, oh yeah, I have a new clip that just posted up to the channel. Y'all go make sure I go check out the clip or whatever. Show some love to all the clips. But yeah, so he's making the case that this has nothing to do with Trump's revenge tour against all of his political enemies. I disagree with that. But at the same time, this is also, which I do agree with him on, that this is self-inflicted on Letitia James's part.
State of New York, Letitia James, she's the chief law enforcement officer, remember, of the entire state of New York, and she's been indicted by the federal Trump DOJ, and the charges are varied. She bought a property in Maryland, and that property she declared on a federal form to obtain a mortgage and also state on taxes. She said that in one case would be her principal residence, and another that it would be perhaps a second home and not rented. So what's going on? Is it when somebody does a wrong, do you forget it and just say, let's move on, because if we don't, we'll enter a cycle of ruinous tit-for-tat lawfare? Or do you say, we're going to hold people responsible who broke the law? We're going to stop it because there will be deterrence. Hello, this is Victor Davis Hanson for the Daily Signal. The Attorney General of the state of New York, Letitia James, has recently been indicted by a grand jury. She's the chief law enforcement officer, remember, of the entire state of New York. And the charges are varied, but they can be boiled down to she bought a property in Maryland. And that property she declared on a federal form to obtain a mortgage and various other considerations that would also state on taxes. She said that in one case would be her principal residence, and another case she said that it would be perhaps a second home and not rented. And as early as 1983, she had applied for an income property where she maybe mistakenly, but she wrongly described the property's square footage and rooms as a rental. And more importantly, she allegedly put her father down as her husband in this 1983 application. So all of this is coming to the fore, and she's been indicted by the federal Trump DOJ, and there's been an outcry. And the issue is not, it doesn't seem to me, she has never said that I never made a mistake on these forms. I was always totally honest. I think her lawyer said she made some errors, but they were insignificant. And by the way, if you're the chief law enforcement officer officer and Attorney General of New York, you should never be saying anything otherwise that you live in New York. That's by statute. The Attorney General must have her principal residence. There's some indication that she waffled on that as well. So what's going on? The left says this is Donald Trump's revenge tour, that if it was not Letitia James, but it was just some other person, the federal government probably would not have looked at it. That's probably true. But on the other hand, Letitia James, who ran for the Attorney Generalship in 2018, ran expressly on a promise to get then President Donald Trump. She even said, I have my eye on Trump Tower. And by 2022, when she ran for re-election, she ran on a promise to get Donald Trump. It was a racialized campaign. She mentioned his gender, the fact that he was white. She whipped up crowds, and she bragged to Al Sharpton that she was going to get Donald Trump. This was the chief law enforcement officer of New York. So when she filed suit in the courtroom of Judge Engoron, a well-known liberal justice, she got a New York jury to convict Donald Trump, and it was an outrageous settlement. And at one point, the fine was $500 million, $500 million. That was a crippling fine, and it was never heard of. And remember, when she did file the suit against Donald Trump, which was eventually challenged at a higher court and all but thrown out, the gist of the case was that he had overvalued a real estate property and unlawfully filled out forms that inflated the value, even though the Deutsche Bank who had issued the loan had no disagreement about the value of the collateral property, had no problem that the loan was paid on time, if not early, and in full to the profit of the Deutsche Bank. So there were no victims in this. No one was complaining. And yet she pursued it. What can we conclude? On the one hand, let's take the left view very quickly, that this is retribution, it's tit for tat, and if we continue this cycle, we're going to descend into a third world country status, where every time a particular party takes over control of the White House, they're going to punish their predecessors of the other party. That's something that we should worry about. But on the other hand, we saw with Alvin Bragg and Letitia James and Fani Willis and Jack Smith a miscarriage of justice. We all knew that those charges that these four prosecutors filed, A, would have never been filed had Donald Trump said he was not going to run again. B, they will never be filed against any other politician, no doubt. And C, if Donald Trump just said that he was going to run, but he decided he was a rhino or he was left-wing and he agreed with Letitia James' political views, he probably would have got off. He would never been indicted. And you can ditto the same attitude from Judge Engoron. So do you just let that all slide, or do you look at what Letitia James has allegedly done? If it's just simply a question, did she say something in writing on a form that was a lie? And did she do that as the Attorney General of New York? So yes, they probably gave her inordinate attention given what she had done in the past. But on the other hand, you give inordinate attention not just to your political enemies that have hurt you, but more importantly to high officials. If she was a campaign flack, if she was the head of the DNC, it would be one thing. But the Attorney General of New York is the chief law enforcement officer of a huge and important state, and she's got to be above suspicion. And the irony is that in many of the commentaries about this indictment, people are using the very words that she used to remind people that Donald Trump should not be above the law. There's a final question, and that is, how do you end it all? How do you end tit for tat or lawfare against Democrats or Republicans? Do you just allow all of these things that went on? Or do you remind the left that everybody is human? And if you really do want to fabricate charges, you better be above suspicion. Because unlike Donald Trump's Letitia James indictment, this is not involving anywhere the amount of financial loss, her case, but it's a clear-cut case. She either lied on forms or she didn't. If she did, she's culpable, and she should be prosecuted and convicted if she's culpable. In the case of Donald Trump, I don't think anybody, left or right, thought that he had done anything wrong. In fact, some of the properties that he listed were more valuable than even he listed. So is it, when somebody does a wrong, do you forget it and just say, let's move on? Because if we don't move on, we'll enter a cycle of ruinous tit-for-tat lawfare. Or do you say, we're going to hold people responsible who broke the law? And yes, we're going to give inordinate attention for those who wage lawfare, but we're going to stop it and remind people, don't do it. Not because we believe that they're moral or that they're virtuous, but because there will be deterrence. And if they know, they being people who use lawfare, know that if they were to do it again, it will boomerang. Just maybe it would stop. Thank you very much. Victor Davis Hanson, The Daily Signal. Thank you for tuning in to The Daily Signal. Please like, share, and subscribe to be notified for more content like this. You can also check out my own website at victorhanson.com and subscribe for exclusive features in addition.
Shout out to Victor. Very insightful. All right, so that's Letitia James right there. So, like I said, we can all agree this one's probably the weaker one of the indictments that were handed out. So, we would know soon enough if she's going to be doing time or not. I don't foresee her doing time. I'll just go ahead and say it again. Like I said before, she's most likely going to be hitting with felonies and become a felon and lose her job. That's the highest degree of punishment I see coming her way. I don't foresee her doing jail time. And of course. All right, we back. We back. Lost connection there for a minute. Anyways, like I said before, and I'll say it again, I don't foresee anything else really of substance happening to Letitia James besides her just possibly having to pay a fine. Her becoming a felon, like I said before. So that's the highest degree of punishment I see coming her way. I don't foresee anything else of seriousness coming. Quite frankly, her losing her attorney general license in New York is the ultimate victory for the Trump administration. Now, regardless of people who say this is political retribution, this is Trump's revenge tour, you know, president to go after all of his enemies, but they kind of just started first. So, hey, could you expect, hey, I much rather it not go down this way, but hey, they did cast the first. Still live on air? Yeah, we're still live. Okay, we're back. I apologize about that. I don't know why it's going in and out, but it's better now. So we're gonna move on to. Let's get on to our next one. We're going to touch up on John Bolton. As you can see here, this scumbag right here. So as I got on my notes right here, John Bolton, of course, former 26th United States National Security Advisor from 2018 to 2019 under the Trump administration, his first one. He was Assistant Attorney General for President Ronald Reagan from 1985 to 1993. This guy's been around for a very long time. And the under Secretary of State for Arms Control and National Security Affairs from 2001 to 2005. That was under George W. Bush. Let's make sure everything is up to par before we go on. I don't want the stream to crash while I'm midway on the show. So everything should be good now. Hour in and we were already cooking. I guess it is. All right. So we should be good now. I see all green. Okay, so John Robert Bolton II, born November 20th, 1948. The guy's old as hell. Is an American attorney, diplomat, Republican consulate, and political commentator. He served as the 25th United States Ambassador to the United Nations from 2005 to 2006, and as the 26th United States National Security Advisor from 2018 to 2019. Bolton served as United States Assistant Attorney General for President Ronald Reagan from 1985 to 1989. He served in the State Department as the Assistant Secretary of State for International Organization Affairs from 1989 to 1999, and under Secretary of State for Arms Control and International Security Affairs from 2001 to 2005. He was an advocate of the Iraq War. This guy's a major war hawk. I've spoken about John Bolton already. This guy gets wet at night thinking about war. This guy literally lives for warfare. He wants war. If you ever think about one of these major war hawks, you look at no further than John Bolton, a guy that lives and breathes for bloodshed. That's what John Bolton is. A vile scumbag that's not really liked by neither on the right or the left. He's pretty much hated by both sides. So, and I don't know, he doesn't really have any sympathy coming his way when it comes to his indictment. All right. So as we go on right now, he was an advocate of the Iraq War as the director of the project for the New American Century, which favored going to war with Iraq. He was the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations for August 2005 to December 2006 as a recess appointee by President George W. Bush. He stepped down at the end of his recess appointment in December 2006 because he was unlikely to win confirmation in the Senate, of which the Democratic Party had control at the time. Bolton later served as National Security Advisor to President Donald Trump from April 2018 to September 2019. He repeatedly called for the termination of the Iran nuclear deal, which was already terminated anyways. I mean, the Iran nuclear deal was terminated, which leads us to all this chaos that we have going on right now with Iran and Israel, especially that 12-day war that we currently came from. But anyways, as the Wikipedia article goes on, from which the U.S. withdrew in May 2018, he wrote a best-selling book about his tenure in the Trump administration, The Room Where It Happened, published in 2020. Remember that one right there. That's key detail later that's going to be brought up as to why his indictment happened in the first place. Bolton is widely considered a foreign policy hawk and advocates military action and regime change by the U.S. in Iran, Syria, Libya, Venezuela, Cuba, Yemen, and North Korea. A member of the Republican Party, his political views have been described as American nationalist and conservative and neoconservative, neo-hawk. Although Bolton rejects the last term, he is a former senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, the AEI, and a Fox News Channel commentator. He was foreign policy advisor to 2012 Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney. And there's no wonder Mitt Romney lost to Barack. With that, and because everyone was obviously Barack was going to win because he was just a great speaker or whatever, and the public at the time thought a change would happen under Barack, but it turns he just made matters just as worse. In October 2025, Bolton was indicted on 8 counts of unlawful transmission and 10 counts of unlawful retention of national defense information between 2018 and 2025. So basically, he was indicted on 18 counts in total. That's a lot of count. That's a lot he was indicted on. So as we go over here to a New York Times article, John Bolton died over handling of classified information. Mr. Trump, a Trump aide turned critic, is part of a string of presidential foes to become prosecutorial targets. But his case gained momentum in the Biden administration. And that's a key point right here. So during the Biden administration, this is when his investigation into John Bolton begun. It didn't begun during the Trump administration. It begun under the Biden administration into John Bolton. Now, of course, it got dropped, and then all of a sudden, no new information came about until Trump got back into office just this year and reopened. Well, basically, it wasn't just Trump. Actually, it was the United States District Court for Maryland that reopened John Bolton's case, and that's why the FBI were raiding his house months ago, looking into his handling of classified information, which is illegal for John Bolton to possess. He's not supposed to have access to high-class, top-secret documents at all since his firing, and apparently he had some in his residence. So as the New York Times article goes on, John R. Bolton, the national security hawk, a former advisor to President Trump who became one of the most outspoken critics, was indicted by a federal grand jury in Maryland on Thursday on charges of mishandling classified information. The indictment against Mr. Bolton was 18 counts and accused him of using personal email and messaging app to share more than 1,000 pages of diary notes about his day-to-day activities as Mr. Trump's national security advisor in 2018 and 2019. You may see some similarities between his case and Hillary Clinton, who also did it similar to as well, who didn't use a government-issued email address, which is basically to keep out hackers from hacking into and getting important information from, like, say, a personal email, which most of government officials have personal emails separate from their government issued emails, which is very heavily fortified from hackers. So John Bolton, obviously, you know, similar to Hillary Clinton, just did the same damn thing. He used that AOL, funny enough. So as this goes on right here, so what was I at? Okay, I'll start right here. So the indictment again against Mr. Bolton was 18 counts and accused him of using personal email and a messaging app to share more than 1,000 pages of diary notes about his day-to-day activities as Mr. Trump's national security advisor in 2018 and 2019. The notes, which were sent to two family members who did not have security clearances, two family members was his wife and daughter. That's who he was writing to. We're gonna go over that when we look at it. When we look at this indictment, it's very long. We're not gonna read all of it. We're gonna read some important parts of the indictment. All right. The notes, which were sent to two family members who did not have security clearances, included national defense information such as details classified as top secret, according to indictment. President Trump and his former aide parted bitterly toward the end of his first term, and the president greeted the news with grim satisfaction. He's a bad guy, Mr. Trump said in response to a question from a reporter at the White House about Mr. Bolton. That's the way it goes. Now, Trump, apparently, when he was doing a press conference, he was asked about how does he feel about, like, his former defense secretary advisor being indicted. He says, "Oh, I didn't know. He's a bad guy, though." Trump being based per usual. So while Mr. Bolton is part of a string of perceived enemies of the president to become prosecutorial targets, the federal investigation into him gained momentum during the Biden administration when U.S. intelligence agencies gathered what former officials have described as troubling evidence. The prosecution appeared to follow normal department channels without firing or forced transfers. Kelly O. Hayes, the U.S. attorney in Maryland, was among the career prosecutors to sign off on the charges in conjunction with the Justice Department's National Security Division. So people can't really say this investigation in John Bolton started during the Trump administration. This actually started during the Biden administration. So during the Biden administration was when they were going after John Bolton because of his mishandling of important information and the fact that he was writing a book which also is from a lot of government officials. But there was one clearance that he didn't get, and that was the intelligence clearance, basically from the FBI. I'm not from the FBI, from the CIA, which John Ratcliffe was also involved in going after John Bolton as well. So by contrast, Mr. Trump in recent weeks has removed or sidelined prosecutors in order to secure indictments against two of his longtime targets, James B. Comey, the FBI director, and Letitia James, New York's attorney general. If convicted, the charges, Mr. Bolton, 76, could spend the rest of his life in prison. Each count carries a maximum potential sentence of 10 years. Yeah, Bolton is cooked right now. So as you can see, this is his indictment right here. As you can see, it's very long. It's 26 pages. So every day right here. So of course, there's two individuals, individual one and individual two, who are mentioned throughout the this indictment. Of course, individual one and individual two is his wife and daughter, who were helping him craft his book. Every time he was out doing stuff as the former national security advisor, he will write to his daughter and wife diary like notes to them. Basically, like sometimes it'd be long pages, like 26 pages, 5 pages, 3, whatever, about his time as security advisor. So that way it could ultimately culminate with him releasing his memoir later on that came out, which is, again, forgive me, where's his memoir at? The Room Where It Happened. Again, was published in 2020, post Trump transitioning his presidency into the Biden administration. So let's go down here where we can find out some of these articles of where Bolton was writing to his daughter and wife. All right, so we got one right here. So it starts right here. Bolton's transmission of national defense information to individuals 1 and 2 while he was national security advisor. As set forth above, between on or about April 9th, 2018 and September 15th, 2019, Bolton sent individual 1 and 2 contemporaneous notes on a regular basis describing in detail his day-to-day activities as national security advisor. Bolton often referred to these notes as his diary and sent them to individuals 1 and 2, which is his daughter and wife, key point, over his personal non-governmental email accounts or a messaging application. The information contained in these notes included detailed information that Bolton learned from his meetings with senior members of the U.S. government, intelligence briefings. This is very well incriminating himself right here. From members of the intelligence community and military, discussions with foreign leaders in foreign intelligence and military organizations and intelligence products and reports, which Bolton had access to because of his role as national security advisor. Portions of the information contained in the diary entries that Bolton sent to individuals 1 and 2 were national defense information, including information classified up to top secret SCI level. Bolton just digged himself a very deep ditch that now he has to lie in, pretty much. He digged himself a very deep ditch. So it seems like to me he's very much screwed in this regard. So, all right, so as it goes on paragraph 28, throughout his time as National Security Advisor, Bolton took detailed notes, documenting his day-to-day meetings, activities, briefings. Frequently, Bolton handwrote these notes, on yellow notepads throughout his day at the White House complex or in other secure locations, and then later rewrote his notes in a word processing document on an electronic device. 29. The notes that Bolton sent to individuals 1 and 2 using his non-governmental personal email accounts and messaging account described in detail Bolton's daily activities as a national security advisor, including national defense and classified information that he learned during his time as national security advisor. Often, Bolton's notes described the secure setting or environment in which he learned the national defense and classified information that he was memorizing in his notes. For example, a description of classified information related to a foreign government's activities might begin with the intel briefer said, or a description of classified information learned during a military briefing might begin with, while in the situation room, I learned that the notes that Bolton sent to individuals 1 and 2 often begin with words. Individual 2's initials start here. In at least one communication, Bolton also referred to individuals 1 and 2 as his editors. Funny enough. All right, so as you can see, like I said, he was writing these diary-like notes to his wife and daughter who were helping him prepare his book. His book that was going to release in 2020 that detailed his time working under the Trump administration, basically. And, obviously speaking, this is a lot of classified information that got Bolton in a lot of trouble. This is what led to his indictment, along with his handling of classified information. Now, of course, it's the book itself is not the cause of the indictment. It's his handling of classified information is what he's being indicted for. It's the fact that he also had some of this stuff. Basically, it's similar to what Trump got raided at Mar-a-Lago for, along with Joe Biden, who also got raided at his personal residence for both of their handling of classified documents. Same thing. Bolton was criticized. He criticized both of them on a news feed, saying how they were both irresponsible for handling classified information. And now Bolton's got hit with the same thing that both of them got hit with. And now, here's the thing about it. They're both presidents of the United States. They're former presidents of the United States. Well, both. Current president and former. So now, they have the rights to hold classified information, regardless of how it was handled or whatever. Bolton isn't allowed to have classified information because he's no longer the security advisor anymore. He's no longer that. the assistant security advisor. He is ousted, so he's no longer allowed to even have classified information in his personal residence anymore. So that is the main reason of why this indictment came about and why they're going after Bolton. Like I said, this didn't just start in the Trump administration. This started in the Biden administration, and then it stopped, and then it got reopened up during Trump's time in office. Now, currently speaking, so Bolton pretty much just already dig his own ditch right here, especially with writing a lot of this information to his daughter and wife. I mean, so it's already he's already dug so big of a ditch. He has to literally just lie in it right now and prepare possibly for doing life in prison. There's a strong possibility that Bolton is going to be incarcerated for the rest of his life, most likely, because of his handling of classified information. So okay, so as some of his indictment goes on, we're let's see, let's get some juicy information in this run, because I read the whole thing already. Let's see. We're gonna go find some juicy information. So here we go. So on paragraph 33, on or about April 22nd, 2018, individuals 2 sent Bolton and individual 1 a message that stated diary finished. Individual 1 also asked individual 2 whether individual 2 was going to call tonight, to which individual 2 responded, am I supposed to? Individual 1 then wrote, diaries take time to write, but phone conversations take less time. Or an information right here. So let's go on to the next one. After that, we're going to go to paragraph 34. On or about July 15, 2018, individual 2 sent Bolton and individual 1 a message that stated, do we get a diary today? Individual 1 responded, don't think he can do it on this trip. Bolton later added, too much going on. I've done much of Friday in London because I didn't take many notes and wanted to get it done before I forgot. 35. On or about July 23rd, 2018, Bolton sent individuals 1 and 2 a message that stated, more stuff coming. A few minutes later, Bolton sent individuals 1 and 2 a 24-page document which described information that Bolton learned while National Security Advisor. Less than 3 hours later, Bolton sent individuals 1 and 2 a follow-up message that stated, none of which we talk about. In response, individuals 1 sent a message that stated, shh. Basically, what he's talking about is hush hush. Basically, top secret information. When I see the word shh, like Bolton, what was Bolton really thinking doing any of this stuff? What was he really thinking about doing any of this stuff? So individual 2 then sent a message that stated, the only interesting thing is what a senior U.S. government official might have said from foreign language interpreted, which you didn't tell us. Approximately 2 minutes later, individual 1 sent a message in response that stated, more to come with Cloak and Dagger or something, so he says. Okay, so we go on to paragraph 36. On or about September 23, 2018, Bolton sent individuals 1 and 2 a 10-page document, Document A, which contained information that Bolton learned while National Security Advisor, including information classified up to top secret SCL level. Paragraph 37. On or about November 23rd, 2018, Bolton sent individuals 1 and 2 a 29-page document, Document B, which contained information that Bolton learned while National Security Advisor, including information classified up to secret Norfund level. 38. On or about December 2nd, 2018, Bolton sent individuals 1 and 2 a 15-page document which contained information that Bolton learned while National Security Advisor. Individual 2 responded, diary arrived and then sent a message that stated, but no commentary on Foreign Country 1, Judicial System Article 1, or administration settlement on arrest in Foreign Country 1. In response, Bolton sent a message that stated, I am working on it. 39. On or about December 4th, 2018, individual 2 sent additional messages to Bolton and and Individual 1 regarding the arrest of an individual in foreign country. In foreign country 1. Individual 2 told Bolton and Individual 1 that the arrest individual in foreign country 1 was being interrogated and that a relative of the arrested individual would be in D.C. if useful to get him in front of senior U.S. government official or anyone else. In response to individuals 2's message that law enforcement in foreign country 1 was interrogating the arrested individual, Individual 1 sent a message that stated, "Yay, gods." Next thing, they'll put a Kajagi, I believe they pronounce it, on him. In response, Individual 2 sent a message that asks, but nickname for Bolton has no feedback. Paragraph 40. On or about January 2nd, 2019, Bolton sent Individuals 1 and 2 a 22-page document which contained information that Bolton learned while National Security Advisor. Bolton also sent a message that stated stuff coming, hard copy at home for a nickname for Individual 1. So we're going to stop it right there. Like I said, if you want to read it, I'll post it up at the bottom if you guys want to read the entire indictment. But that's pretty much writing down top secret information discussing arrest of a foreign individual in a country 1, and then discussing about if said individual is going to get in front and talk to said state U.S. government official. So that's not a good look right here. Like I said, is a U.S. government official, as you can see right here. This is on paragraph 39. If you really want to read this one, like a foreign individual arrested in a foreign country, and he's discussing this with his wife and daughter, may I add, who have no government clearance to be able to discuss this type of sensitive information. They have zero authority to discuss this at all, even with John Bolton. So we're gonna go over to Fox News and get their take on this, and then we're gonna get CNN's take on this, which you're gonna hear how similar they are in their view about John Bolton.
Our other top story tonight, former Trump administration National Security Advisor John Bolton is facing federal charges over alleged mishandling of classified information. The indictment was handed down a short time ago. Correspondent David Spunt has breaking details tonight. Good evening, David.
John, good evening, or Brett, good evening. The former Ambassador John Bolton, that's why I said John, facing these 18 counts in this indictment after a Maryland grand jury decided he should face charges related to his alleged retention and transmission of classified documents. His own attorney, Brett, admitted that he kept some of these classified documents. Bolton charged not only with keeping top secret classified information, but sharing it with family members. The Justice Department says Bolton sent diary-like entries about his workdays at the White House and shared information classified up to the top secret SCI level, the highest level, and shared them on messaging apps and personal AOL and Google email accounts. Prosecutors, Brett, seen leaving the federal court after the indictment, have been probing Bolton since the Biden administration. President Trump reacting in real time to the indictment from the Oval Office, where Bolton used to frequent.
I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes, right? That's the way it goes.
We were there as FBI agents raided Bolton's Maryland home and Washington, D.C. office in August. Agents were looking for classified documents. His attorney, Abby Lowell, telling Fox News the following just within the last half an hour. These charges stem from portions of Bolton's personal diaries over his 45-year career, records that are unclassified, shared only with his immediate family and known to the FBI as far back as 2021. Like many public officials throughout history, Bolton kept diaries. That is not a crime. We look forward to proving that once again, Ambassador Bolton did not unlawfully share or store any information. Here's Bolton, though, Brett, in 2023, responding to a question about FBI raids on former President Trump's property and President Biden's Delaware home with classified documents. Watch.
It sets a bad example for the thousands of other people in the federal bureaucracy who have security clearances, because if the people at the top can be casual about it and then get away with it, that is not a good lesson to teach.
Bolton almost 3 years ago. No word yet, Brett, on his first court appearance.
Okay, we'll follow with David. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bolton was just indicted by a grand jury in Maryland. Do you have a reaction to that?
I didn't know that. You tell me for the first time, but I think he's, a bad person. I think he's a bad guy. Yeah, he's a bad guy. It's too bad, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes, right? That's the way it goes. Will I what?
Have you reviewed the case against him?
No, I haven't. But I just think he's a bad person.
Fox News alert, President Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, has been indicted. He's accused of mishandling classified documents. Let's go right to Fox News correspondent David Spunt with the details. David.
Hi, well, this is breaking news out of Greenbelt, Maryland, federal court there. A federal grand jury has returned an indictment against former National Security Advisor John Bolton, but we want to be very careful. This has not been unsealed yet, so we don't know the names of the charges, specifically what charges he's facing, and we don't know how many counts he is facing yet, but we do know that this deals with allegedly mishandling classified documents. His own attorney, Abby Lowell, who famously represented Hunter Biden, Bill Clinton, Jared Kushner in the past, put out a statement a couple of weeks ago when news was swirling that this may be happening, admitting that Bolton did have classified documents in his possession, but said that those were pre-cleared for the publication of his book. So not much information right now other than to tell you that former National Security Advisor John Bolton has been indicted for allegedly mishandling classified documents. I do want to point out, though, that on August 27th, while we were there as FBI agents raided his Maryland home and Washington, D.C. office, agents were looking for these classified documents. And again, Abby Lowell said many of these documents would be, and I want to read a statement here. You don't have it, but I'm just going to paraphrase it here. I'm going to actually read the quote. We're just not going to put up the quote. He said, quote, "These are the kinds of ordinary records, many of which are 20 years old or more, that would be kept by a 40-year-old career official who served at the State Department, an Assistant Attorney General, the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, and the National Security Advisor." He said that these are dated with classification markings from 1998 to 2006. He says an objective and thorough review will show nothing inappropriate was stored or kept by Ambassador Bolton. So John Bolton indicted for allegedly mishandling classified documents, and he had said many times in the past during the raid on Mar-a-Lago or when classified documents were found at President Biden's home in Wilmington, Delaware. Remember, he had an investigation too for classified documents. Bolton criticized both those men, and he said, quote, "Because if the people at the top can be casual about it when they get away with it, that is not a good lesson to teach," end quote. That was John Bolton in 2023. So still very fresh. This just broke. We're waiting to get some reaction from Bolton's team. I reached out to his attorney, Mr. Lowell, and we're waiting to see about this indictment being unsealed to get a little bit more detail here. Will.
Okay, thank you for that report. David, let's continue to break this down. John Bolton indicted by a federal grand jury in Maryland. Let's talk about that with Fox News legal analyst now, Greg Jarrett. Greg, let me just get your initial reaction to a grand jury indicting John Bolton.
Well, Will, when Bolton's home and office were raided by the FBI, I mean, that was a pretty good, obvious sign that they already had probable cause to believe that he was keeping classified material in prohibited places. That, of course, is a violation of the Espionage Act. And so an indictment seemed inevitable from that moment in time. The focus has been...
The thing about it, I also find it funny, John Bolton was really gleeful about the anticipation of bringing charges against Edward Snowden. If people don't know who Edward Snowden is, he is a former CIA analysis data. I believe he worked in the data analysis part of the CIA or the surveillance part. I have to look up. It's been a while since I read about Edward Snowden, but Edward Snowden is famous for leaking information that the U.S. government was spying on the U.S. citizens. So, and then he obviously fled the United States because he would be charged under the Espionage Act, and he had to flee to Russia, which he currently still resides at right now, because if he comes back to the States, he will be prosecuted under the Espionage Act and possibly doing a long time in prison, probably forever. So John Bolton was very gleeful about Edward Snowden possibly being arrested at some point, and calling for his arrestment and calling for the government to go into Russia and basically just take this guy out, and take this guy and just arrest him or take him out or whatever. And now it's kind of weird, like how now it's come full circle. Now John Bolton's getting charged with espionage, with under the Espionage Act himself, basically committing something, in my opinion, far worse than what Edward Snowden did. What Edward Snowden did was expose that American citizens are being spied on by the government. What John Bolton did was just being irresponsible as fuck with handling classified information that he shouldn't even have his possession, because he's no longer the national security advisor anymore. So it's very funny, like how Bolton sits up here and acts like he has the moral high ground when he's the one doing the dumbass shit right now, and possibly he's going to prison for the rest of his life.
Really threefold. Physical documents with classified markings in his possession. Then there's, second of all, private notes on his AOL account that allegedly contain classified information. And finally, published material from his book that was not pre-approved, says the government, by the intelligence community, which the law requires. I think, Will, that the AOL account is truly problematic because it was hacked by a foreign adversary, according to an intel assessment that's actually contained in the warrant affidavit. So if that's true, that only supports the case against him, because that's precisely what the Espionage Act was designed to protect. And, as for Abby Lowell, he's a very fine attorney, but it doesn't matter how old these documents are. If they're still classified, it is criminal to have them in your possession. And furthermore, legally, it doesn't matter whether it was willful or sloppy, because under the Espionage Act, It's both. It's a crime if it's either intentional or negligent. I mean, you would think that after the notorious Hillary Clinton case, the guilty plea by General David Petraeus, both of whom mishandled classified documents quite clearly, that others like Bolton, who are in government, wouldn't do it. They'd be extra careful. But, you know, John Bolton has always tried to leverage his positions in government by profiting financially from books. And, you know, keeping classified documents may have been his motivation, as it was for Joe Biden, who unlawfully stored classified documents in his home and garage. And he admitted it was for the purpose of writing a book.
I'm going to ask you as well if you wouldn't mind hanging out as we continue this conversation, because we also have the Ruthless crew on call. We got Josh Holmes, Comfortably Smug, Michael Duncan, and John Ashbrook, who are also with us here today to get their reaction. Fellas, you can only imagine what the reaction might be from the other side on other channels from Democrats. There will be a long conversation about the weaponization of the Justice Department. Mark Thiessen makes a great point. Very hard to make that argument after what we just saw with Donald Trump.
No question about it. And I appreciate the caution in jumping to conclusions here. We don't know what the specific charges are. But I think the reality that has been presented before us over the last couple of years is that you've got a foreign policy and a security establishment in this country that has done an awful lot to have a protected class, where you go after certain people that are playing the game. You don't go after others. Brennan, Clapper, others who have demonstrably had issues, but yet it committed the same sort of alleged crimes as others that you choose to prosecute. And all of that sort of changed when they decided to bring this to Donald Trump's doorstep. He gets reelected. They're sorting all of this out. I don't know how this ends, but I got to imagine that this entire transparency of who's doing what has got to be of some benefit to the country.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, my initial thoughts, this is going to be very predictable, because the Dems score the worst own goal by trying to run on no one is above the law, no one is above the law, and now that's going to haunt them. So what they're going to do is, as predictable as ever, they're going to say this is a political witch hunt. This is Trump prosecuting his enemies. Well, when you run on no one is above the law, guess what? No one's above the law.
And I think we have to secure the process a little bit here. This really isn't even a partisan take, but like, it seems to me that there's people in our security and intelligence agencies that take home confidential, top secret documents. Like, I have CVS receipts in my car. It's crazy.
Yeah, this administration is taking law and order very seriously, and I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon.
I think.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News.
That is Fox News. Let's get to CNN, see what they have to say.
We have breaking news right here on CNN from our Caitlin Polans, who has been reporting on the possible indictment of John Bolton, the former national security advisor for President Trump.
Bruh, you could just tell the feminist look of this woman right here. Overweight, wearing the glasses. You know, you could just look at the woman and just tell this reeks of feminist bullshit right here. Like, CNN, don't get me wrong, Fox be employing a lot of feminist women too in a lot of their news medias. At least they're attractive though. CNN literally employs these fat out of shape whales, bro. Literally, look at this fat bitch, bro. Got the leather jacket on and everything, trying to look hip and pop. Girl probably weighs about almost close to 200 pounds.
Trump in his first term. Caitlin,
I've seen her literally stand next to the camera, bro. She's big, man. Almost like she's pregnant with triplets.
No.
Casey, John Bolton, the former national security advisor to Donald Trump, a longtime federal government official, has been indicted by a grand jury. We are learning that through two different sources from our producer, Hannah Rabinowitz, at the Justice Department, and we have confirmed that. The grand jury was in today with the lead prosecutor on that case, the same prosecutor who had been on some of the documents of the search of Bolton's house just 2 months ago, or not even 2 months ago, a prosecutor who also has some experience in investigating these sorts of things. He was a prosecutor that was also working on the Biden classified documents handling investigation that led to no charges. But in this situation, the bulk of this case, it's been going on for several years, and our understanding is that it's about John Bolton's use of an email account with AOL, an email account where he was writing diary-like notes and summaries of his time as national security advisor to himself, at times even sending them to his wife and daughter. And that is the sort of thing that the Justice Department does say frequently, not just in the climate of a Trump administration, that that's something that you should not do. We have seen many charges like this before of other high-ranking officials, and that also with John Bolton in those search warrants, and what we're very likely to see in court going forward is that the Justice Department saying he should have known better. Casey?
Caitlin, can you take us through here the timeline of investigations into John Bolton and just what we know and don't know about the administrations under which they were started? Because there was a probe into his book that started under the first Trump administration that the Biden administration later dropped. Can you just walk us through what we know, what we don't know about whether these two things are related?
Yeah, Casey, I think as far as thinking about this, in which administration did it start, it's not about that. It's more about when there was information coming into investigators that led them to want to investigate the possible criminality here that would lead to an indictment today. I'm still waiting to see exactly what the indictment says about what type of documents they would be that would be mishandled, what is in there about timing of an investigation, or even timing of when these original acts would have taken place. Congress and the federal government learned about them. But Casey, the arc of this investigation, there were two things that happened. Both of those things became part of the search warrant. One, John Bolton was writing his book, and when he was working on the manuscript, was in touch with federal officials to clear everything, to take things out of that book that might be classified. He worked with them for some time and then got into a tiff, essentially, with the Justice Department and the Trump administration. They didn't want him to publish it. He wanted to publish it. It did go to publish. And that was something Donald Trump wanted him investigated about. That's one aspect. But this AOL account, that's another thing that has had a long history of being investigated, both by people in the Biden administration, career prosecutors, as well as career prosecutors still in the District of Maryland in this administration. And the arc of that investigation, it came to the Justice Department because John Bolton, his email was hacked by a foreign government. And during the intelligence collection around that, as far as we know from our sources, it became clear to the American federal government that there might be stuff in his email account that probably shouldn't have been kept in an unsecured way.
Well, and the hack by a foreign government of his commercial email account would sort of underscore the point that you're making there. Okay, so our Kristen Holmes, senior White House correspondent, just asked President Trump, or was in an event with President Trump where he was asked about this indictment. Let's watch that.
Know that you tell me for the first time, but I think he's a bad person. I think he's a.
Don't you just love Trump? Like he just like he pretends he didn't know, but let's be real. He knows that he know John Bolton got indicted. He gleefully knew this was coming. So he knew this was coming. So it's not surprising. He just acts like he didn't know. So it's funny. It's funny how he's acting like he didn't know, but it's hilarious.
It's too bad, but that's the way it goes. That's the way it goes, right? That's the way it goes. Well, what?
Have you reviewed the case against him?
No, I haven't. But I just think he's a bad person.
That is the voice of our Kristen Holmes there. Caitlin, he sort of handled that a little bit differently than he sometimes talks about some of these other cases, but of course underscores his personal feelings about his former national security advisor.
Yeah, Trump has for some time said that he wanted to see Bolton face consequences, especially for that book. It was very damaging for Trump at the time, and he even went to court to try and stop Bolton from publishing and was not able to do so. But in recent months, Trump has been pretty reticent about speaking about Bolton. He said publicly he wanted others to be charged. Adam Schiff, who has not been charged with any crime, James Comey, who has, Letitia James, who also has. Bolton has not really been at the forefront of the people on Trump's list lately. One thing I do want to add, though, we are now hearing from both Hannah, covering the Justice Department, Hannah Rabinowitz, and our own Evan Perez.
That was the Department of Maryland that brought out this indictment against Bolton. It wasn't more of the Trump administration. This was Maryland that are pursuing Bolton to be prosecuted. It's not so much the Trump administration on this one. Yeah, there is you could tell there is some form of like, Trump does still want Bolton to face consequences for his actions, but for me personally speaking, this seems more like this is more on the lines of Maryland finding all this information about Bolton having access to classified information in his household and his handling of classified information under his personal email, which we've already spoken about, and we read about that already in his indictment, how he's sending personal information to his wife and daughter who don't have clearance to have access to none of this information. So I think the reason why, for me, if CNN is making this accusation that Trump is not too much worried about Bolton, where it's probably because he already knows Bolton's guilty as hell, and Bolton's definitely going to prison. So
that Bolton is expected to self-surrender as soon as tomorrow in federal court in Greenbelt.
We're gonna cover that video too of him surrendering, and also he did plead not guilty. So we're going to cover that too and more.
Maryland. So it's not going to be a long time until we start seeing more of the meat of what this case may be, and the court proceedings get off to a start very quickly. Casey?
Very interesting. All right, Caitlin, stand by for us. I know you're going to have more information coming in, both from you and, of course, our great Justice Department team. Our panels here, we also still have Elliot Williams, legal analyst, and Bill Brennan with us as well. And Elliot Williams, let me start with you here. You were in our text chain earlier talking about John Bolton's AOL account. This, of course, seems to be the central piece of the indictment here. And as Caitlin just walked through, this apparently came to light amid a hack from a foreign adversary, an intelligence investigation into that. What would you underscore here, as, of course, we consider this in the context that we're all living in here of the second Trump administration?
Yeah, certainly. And Scott made the point a little bit earlier. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty. That's how it works. Someone's charged with a crime. I will say, and Barrett Berger, again, who I went to law school with, and we were chatting about this earlier in the text thread, we were talking about this very point. I cannot say, Casey, how many warnings you get as a young Justice Department attorney about the handling of classified information. And that includes, don't email things to yourself. Don't take your notes out of the room. Do not write on classified or sensitive documents, because every time you alter or manipulate a document, you could be exposing yourself to trouble. Do not show things to other people. Do not share things with other people. You can only look at certain things in certain rooms. And more than anybody else, again, John Bolton, innocent until proven guilty, but if there's any human being who ought to know better about sharing information, it's him. Now, again, it remains to be seen how much information the administration has about him. And more to the point, and we said this in the text exchange too, even if he is guilty, the extent to which Trump, the president, has been speaking about John Bolton's guilt could jeoprodize, the integrity of the investigation. The more you talk about, the president talks about wanting people to be locked up and wanting his opponents to be locked up, the more he sort of casts a little bit of a cloud over the seriousness of the prosecution. But again, we get so many warnings about these classified information that every time someone screws it up, you just sort of have to scratch your head about the stupidity that goes into mishandling information like this.
Right. Well, and I mean, Bill Brennan, to that point, this is someone, and we know from the search warrant that came down for his home, that his comments that he had made in public about others who were accused of mishandling classified information or using, a commercial app to communicate in the case of the Signal Gate issue, that John Bolton was well aware of what Elliot Williams underscored here, how you should handle this information.
He also made a comment about Pete Hegseth and the rest of all of the cabinet that were in a Signal group chat that got leaked by the media. He was criticizing that and making fun of them and saying, like, how dare a cabinet this incompetent go on a regular digital non-governmental group chat like Signal and discuss sensitive and high class and top secret information, especially about the bombing in Yemen. He criticized him for that. He criticized Pete Hegseth for that, and was on Pete. He was basically, he was on Pete's ass about doing that stuff, about orchestrating a group chat like that on a non-secure line, like a non-secure app like Signal. But then he goes back. But then this information comes out that he was on AOL email discussing and having access to private information on a non-governmental email server. Come on, Bolton, man. How you make fun of everyone, all that, the next thing you know, the information comes out later on that you were doing the same thing which you was making fun of everyone else for.
Elliot makes an excellent point, Casey. The training is just so people are inundated with these warnings: don't share, don't email. And if he came out of maybe HHS or EPA, he could possibly raise some defense that I didn't know, but he was the National Security Department. I mean, ignorance of the law, which doesn't work anyway half the time, is going to be no excuse in this case. And I'm going to steal a word from Elliot. It's either his stupidity, and he is not a stupid man, so it's probably his arrogance that led to this, if in fact he did it. I can't say enough. The fact that he's indicted does not mean anything. He's presumed innocent. But it doesn't look good. This is a 5-year investigation, and warrants were authorized by federal judges for his residence and his office, and the prosecutors handling this are the U.S. attorney's a President Biden appointee with a long history in the Department of Justice, and the line prosecutor is from the National Security Division, who worked on other cases of a similar nature. And, the type of allegation here, Casey's troubling, because there's that iconic photograph of allegedly classified documents behind President Biden's 1967 Corvette in a garage. For someone to get to them, you'd have to break into President Biden's garage, move his old Corvette if it starts, and maybe get these documents. In this case, it's on AOL, which anybody can hack, and apparently a foreign government did, and it puts this nation at risk. It
was Iran who hacked his AOL account. Was an Iranian hacker that had information, that had access to Bolton's information, which, come on, Bolton, man. It just gets worse and worse for this guy every day. Everyone knows this guy's guilty and more. Even the left is not sparing him. The right is damn sure not sparing this guy. This guy's they're coming at him from both sides right now.
In fact, he did this, and how is he going to look at a jury and say, I didn't know? This is the guy who's telling people not to do this, who made remarks about Secretary Clinton. If I did what they say she did, I'd be in an orange jumpsuit. He may get his wish.
Yeah, this guy, he's screwed right now. So we're going to go to MSNBC. Yeah, even they're crucifying him over here too.
John Bolton, President Trump's former national security advisor turned vocal critic, was indicted yesterday by a federal grand jury in Maryland. He is expected to surrender to authorities and make an initial court appearance today, according to two senior federal law enforcement sources. Bolton is now the third high-profile political adversary of the president to face criminal charges in less than 1 month.
Breaking news, U.S. military strikes destroy another narco terrorist boat coming out of Venezuela. It's breaking news. That's on that's coming from Fox News. Yeah, we definitely gonna have to cover this tomorrow. I'm gonna get everything set up for tomorrow's stream. What articles we're gonna be covering.
joining former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. He faces 18 counts related to the transmission and retention of national defense information. Prosecutors say Bolton stored diary-like entries about his time in government that included classified information and then shared more than 1,000 pages of that information with two family members who did not have security clearances. Bolton is denying any wrongdoing, comparing the Trump administration to Joseph Stalin's secret police, who said, "You show me the man and I'll show you the crime." Bolton went on to say, in part, quote, "These charges are not just about Trump's focus on me or my diaries, but his intensive effort to intimidate his opponents. Dissent and disagreement are foundational to America's constitutional system and vitally important to our freedom." Attorney General Pam Bondi, meanwhile, welcomed the charges, writing in part, quote, "No one is above the law." Jonathan Lemire, let's stop right there. Let's talk about these charges and what they're exactly looking at here with this former national security advisor.
Yeah, we had a similar victory lap-like statement from FBI Director Kash Patel yesterday as well. It is well known, John Bolton, who did briefly work for the president and national security advisor in Trump's first term, has turned a sharp critic of Trump, including in recent months how he's handled the situation in Ukraine. In fact, he's drawn Trump's wrath on Truth Social a number of times, most recently around the Putin summit in Anchorage 2 months back that yielded very little. And now we have a moment here where a retribution campaign is continuing. We know it's James Comey, it's Letitia James. Trump just this week, because we've been talking about from the Oval Office with the Attorney General standing and the FBI Director standing alongside him, naming other individuals he would want to see indicted. This one, though, does seem a little different. And for more on that, let's bring in MSNBC Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney. So, Ken, people I've talked to say, look, this is still a broad pattern of retribution. There is still great concern how the president is shattering norms and directing his DOJ either specifically or just by, naming villains, if you will, naming foes, and others kind of get the hint to who they go after. But the John Bolton case was described to me is a little different than Comey and James. There's a little more of a there. Walk us through what you know about this particular matter.
Good morning, Jonathan. Good morning, guys. You're absolutely right. I think it's a lot different, actually. This is what my sources are telling me than those other cases, which appear to be largely without merit. This one, though, arose in the Biden administration, and this is a very serious and detailed indictment. It says that John Bolton derived secrets from his time as national security advisor, assembled them because he was writing a book, sent them over unclassified email and messaging apps to his wife and daughter. We've identified the two people as his wife and daughter. And then that information was hacked by the government of Iran. At least one of those email accounts was hacked. And so the government of Iran obtained some of these state secrets, according to this indictment. And the indictment says that Bolton used language that made clear he knew he was talking about sensitive information, things like the intel briefer said, or when in the situation room I learned. And these charges, as you said, carry 10 years each, so he could spend the rest of his life in prison, in theory, if convicted on these charges. But let me tell you what the defense could be here. I should add that, and this case is being prosecuted by career prosecutors, respected people, unlike the Comey and the James case, which was avoided by every career prosecutor in the department and pursued only by Donald Trump's political appointee. This one has gone through normal channels, as we understand it. But let me explain some potential mitigating circumstances here. Lots of people who have jobs where they see classified information write books, and they send the manuscript through a publication review. For example, if you're a CIA officer, and oftentimes those reviewers will say, "Sorry, you can't say that. It was classified. We're keeping that out of the book." Well, that information was classified. It went over an unclassified email system. Those people don't get prosecuted for doing that. What's at issue here are not documents marked classified, which was the case in the Donald Trump indictment. This was information that John Bolton gathered and wrote down in diaries and sent that the FBI and the CIA and other people have determined contain national defense information. And when you look at the descriptions in the indictment, it's pretty clear that some of it probably did. But the question here is, where is the line for people who are writing books? John Bolton did go through the publication review process here. Now there's allegations that he ignored some of the suggestions from people about what to leave out of the book. But there's a lawyer named Mark Zaid who represents a lot of people who write books. And what he was saying last night is that if you're going to prosecute John Bolton, you got to prosecute a lot of other people who wrote books and had potentially classified information on their email system.
Well said. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna go get Jimmy Dore's. This is Jimmy Dore's show. He covered this up into as well, and he's talking about what everyone's missing about the John Bolton indictment. Very good video from him. It's like 30.
What makes the Bolton indictment?
Go check out his channel too. Subscribe. I love his content and stuff like that. He's a little bit of a centrist. He's in the middle or whatever. But you gotta love the centrists because they come with some facts sometimes. Because if they're not tied to a party, they tend to have their alliances between both sides and just side with whatever's good, whatever's benefit to America. You could always trust a centrist to make that decision.
So
Jimmy Dore is a little bit to the left, but I still wouldn't say he's like fully left because he's more factual based.
Unusual in the Trump era is that it is so usual. The prosecution followed normal department channels. without firings or without strong arm orders from the White House or forced transfers. Kelly O'Hayes, the U.S. attorney in Maryland, signed off on the charges in conjunction with the department's National Security Division. So this is an investigation that started under Joe Biden, and it's very usual. Hey, guess what, Kurt? John Bolton, the warmongering sociopath that was hated by America until he became the darling of CNN because he hated Trump. This guy is a cretin of the first order.
And
And
laugh at all my jokes at one time, so I'm rooting for him.
so they indicted him for illegally having and sharing classified information.
Well, that's a crime now.
By the way, you have to admire somebody who carries their own luggage without wheels. I mean, it says a lot about a man. Nobody knows exactly what it says, but it definitely says a lot about a guy who still goes old school, no wheels on his luggage.
Old school mustache as well.
Oh yeah, he was actually, John Bolton was created from a rough sketch by the Simpsons creator. I don't know if you know that.
Mac Groening,
Mac Groening? Yeah.
I think he's got that prestigious hand grenade award from the State Department that they gave him
Oh,
as
yes.
a joke gift that he is very proud of. But clearly, it was a joke. Anybody?
Remember that? Yes, I should
Loudest
put
fart trophy.
I wish I remember that. I'd put it in this segment. But just real quick, what's going on? First of all, he's guilty. Just in case you don't know, he's guilty. He did it, and I think it's going to be hard for him to defend against this. The difference between him and Donald Trump, when they said Donald Trump took classified material, the FBI staged that crime scene when they raided Trump's house after he was president. First time they've ever raided a president's house. So that was a political prosecution, just like all the other prosecutions of Trump were, just like January 6th was political prosecutions, right?
Yeah, not because he's never done crimes, but they got to get him on crimes. They're not completely guilty.
That's right. So that was exactly. That's why it took him so long to impeach Trump the first time. They had to find a crime that they weren't also complicit in.
Didn't succeed, it looks like.
Didn't succeed. I mean, they did impeach him, but they didn't get the Senate to agree, so he didn't have to. So just real quick, and it's going to be really hard for him to defend himself against this because and unlike Trump, who was the president, who could unclassify anything he wanted. So the president can take any document that's classified and just go, it's unclassified now. Why? Because I'm the president and I said so. Because he's the top of the chain. He's supposed to be the top of the chain.
That's why they won't show him all the documents, because he can maybe do that.
That's
They
right.
have that stuff above him.
That's right. So that's the big difference between that and this. Also, another big difference is the FBI staged the crime scene with Donald Trump. And it doesn't appear they did that with John Bolton. Of course, John Bolton, as you'll find out, hasn't even really denied he's done this. But here's the AI overview. Says on October 16th, former National Security Advisor John Bolton was indicted on charges related to unlawfully retaining and transmitting classified information, some of which was accessed by hackers believed to be associated with Iran.
What?
So so that's another part people are missing on this, that Iran hacked into his computer where he had this stuff, and then he alerts the government that happened, but he doesn't tell them, hey, I had classified information on there. He didn't tell them that. So the indictment was announced by the Department of Justice following an investigation that began. When did this begin? It began in 2022.
Oh.
So it began during the Biden administration. The Biden administration opened up this investigation into John Bolton when John Bolton was a darling of the liberal class because he hated Trump. And that's why he's a darling on CNN. He's one of their favorite people. And just to let you know, this is what New York Times says about this. I want to show you this real quick before we move on. So I got this from watching our buddy Greenwald. Glenn Thrush from the New York Times says, what makes the Bolton indictment so unusual in the Trump era is that it is so usual. The prosecution followed normal department channels without firings or without strong arm orders from the White House or forced transfers. Kelly O'Hayes, the U.S. attorney in Maryland, signed off on the charges in conjunction with the department's National Security Division. So this is an investigation that started under Joe Biden, and it's very usual. There's no, you know how Trump recently, to get Comey, he had to get rid of the attorney general in wherever it was, and then install another one, his personal lawyer. And so they had to do that kind of stuff. None of that stuff's happening here. This is all by the book. And because it appears pretty much he did this. After Bolton left office, his personal email account was hacked by a cyber actor believed to be linked to the Iranian government. This hack gave the foreign entity access to the classified information Bolton had emailed his relatives.
What?
So what Bolton was doing was, there was a group chat, I'm going to show you in a second. There was a group chat between him, his daughter, and his wife.
And Michael Bolton, the saxophone guy?
Different guy. But they were actually trying to plan on writing a book. And so he was sharing classified information with his wife and his daughter, who do not have security clearances. And he was putting it on his own computer, not a government computer, which is protected from hack, but his own private computer. So again, he's doing it in 10 different ways wrong.
So many carelessness from Bolton's part right now. So many just careless mistakes from a guy who's been in politics since Ronald Reagan days. He's been in politics since 1985. That's how long Bolton's been around in the realm of politics, and he's made this big of a blunder. Really, you look at Hillary Clinton, also made a big blunder herself. She did the same exact thing with handling classified information by using her personal email herself. It's the same exact book written, copy and paste. Not much difference. The difference was Hillary Clinton never got charges brought against her. John Bolton did. Hillary Clinton got off scot-free, basically got off of murder. John Bolton's not getting off of murder. He is definitely guilty and definitely going to prison. So he's screwed. I predict he's screwed.
You can't announce a citizen's clearance, Jimmy?
Right. The indictment also alleges that Bolton unlawfully retained physical and digital versions of these sensitive documents at his home in Maryland. Failure to report breach. According to the indictment, a representative for Bolton reported the hacks of the government in 2021, but didn't disclose that the account contained classified information, which concealed the full extent of the security. So the guy is a creep. He's a warmongering sociopath, always wanting to slaughter people, always wanting to hang and kill people. And here's the interesting thing.
Key advocator for the Iraq War.
People who did what he did, he's always advocated for them to be either hung from an oak tree, or
very specific.
He picked out a specific tree he wanted them hung from, or he wanted them in prison for 176 years. Let's listen to this. This is what he's talking.
What do you think of Bradley?
You remember when Chelsea Manning, then Bradley Manning, revealed to WikiLeaks the war crimes that America was committing? Now, nobody ever got in trouble for the war crimes that Bradley Manning, Chelsea Manning, and WikiLeaks revealed. Nobody got in trouble for those. They got in trouble for telling people that America was committing war crimes. So it's not a crime. So when telling people about a crime is the crime and not doing the crime, you know you're run by criminals. So the United States government is pretty much criminals. And so here's what John Bolton had to say about him when he revealed the war crimes that America had been doing.
What do you think of Bradley Manning?
I think he committed treason. I think he should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
What does that mean?
Well, treason is the only crime defined by our Constitution. And it says treason shall consist only of levying war against the United States or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. And he gave our enemies a lot of aid and comfort.
So what should happen to him?
Well, he should be prosecuted. And if he's found guilty, he should be punished to the fullest extent possible.
And what is that?
Death.
You think he should be killed?
Yes.
Bruh.
So there you go.
Bruh.
Boy, that talk about... has John Bolton heard about the new diet? That's the one where you get to eat your own words. Really slimming.
I'm going to tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree for
funny.
So he wanted that guy to be killed. So the guy who did what he just did is accused of doing, which I'm pretty positive he did.
Can I just say, Jimmy, I have to give Hillary Clinton a lot of credit because she's just as crazy and killy as John Bolton, but she had the decency and loyalty to America to burn her hard drives with acid and have a guy killed.
John Bolton, on the prison sentence he believes Julian Assange should get. You want to hear it? Here's what he thinks should happen to Julian Assange. Now, the thing that Glenn makes point here is that unlike Bolton, Assange isn't an American.
I know.
So he had no duties to maintain the secrecy of classified information because he's a foreign, he's not even American.
They were all saying that, Jimmy. All of them were saying that. The guy with the suspenders on Fox, he's a traitor. You know why they're saying traitor? Because they're loyal to the transatlantic partnership NATO shit. That's how they mean. They forget.
So unlike John Bolton, who had a responsibility to keep those government secrets, Julian Assange, as a journalist and an Australian, not even American, had no responsibility to do so. But here's what he wanted to happen to Julian Assange.
Well, I think that's a small amount of the sentence he actually deserves. He's committed clear criminal activity. He's no more a journalist than the chair I'm sitting on. The information that he divulged did, in fact, put many people in jeopardy. It undercut the ability of the United States to have confidential diplomatic communications, not just with other foreign governments, but in many countries with dissidents, people who, even speaking to American diplomats, could find themselves in trouble. And so, he's been complaining about his treatment over the past period of time. He's the one who sought asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy. Now he faces extradition to the United States. I presume he will get due process in the United Kingdom to determine whether extradition should go forward. And when he gets to the United States, he'll get due process here. And I hope he gets at least 176 years in jail for what he did.
Oops. Whoopsie daisy. Boy, Bolton can't wait to treat Assange like he was a real American. And now here we are, Edward Snowden.
By the way, ironically, Jimmy, that chair he spoke of is a better journalist than Caitlin Collins.
It turns out. And here's Glenn Greenwald making, because Glenn Greenwald's very tightly intertwined with Edward Snowden. He says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, here is the defendant, Bolton, in his own words, on what ought to be done to people who leak American secrets. Here we go.
I think it's a big mistake. I have no idea. I mean, my view is that Snowden committed treason. He ought to be convicted of that, and then he ought to swing from a tall oak tree.
Look, it's Malibu Kyle.
Who's this little chubby cherub in front of me?
Wasn't that something?
Look at those virginal cheeks.
So he wanted Edward Snowden to swing from an oak tree. He even picked out the tree, the kind of tree he wanted him swinging from. So that's so I want to show you what they got. I want to go right to the indictment.
Doesn't Elon mean oak tree, Jimmy? That's how you say in Hebrew.
So it's an 18-count indictment. So he sent classified information in a group chat to his wife and his daughter, unauthorized people, while he worked at the White House, and keeping similar documents at his home after he left the government. The 18-count indictment contends that Bolton regularly sent more than 1,000 pages of diary-like entries to two people related to him, his wife and his daughter, while he was handling the nation's most sensitive military intelligence and diplomatic matters. Many of the messages contained information designated as classified up to the top secret sensitive compartmented information level, prosecutors allege. Federal prosecutors in Maryland secured the indictment from a grand jury, which met for about 3 hours to consider the case. It only took them 3 hours to say, yeah, indict that guy. Bolton, 76, served for more than a year as a national security advisor under Trump, but later drew Trump's ire. Yeah, I wonder why. The charges against Bolton come as Trump has pressured his Justice Department. Okay, so then they got to tell you all this other stuff about, oh, he's pressuring it. It doesn't have anything to do with this case. This has nothing to do with this case. Letitia James Comey, has nothing to do with this case because this case was started by the Biden administration, as I already showed you, Glenn Thrush said in the New York Times.
Can you imagine being that disliked?
Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Cash Patel insisted Thursday that this is one's here just blah, blah, blah. After the FBI searched Bolton's home and office in August, pursuant to court-issued warrants, Trump claimed to have no knowledge of it. Okay. He just said he was a bad guy. Trump says he was a bad guy.
It's still funny to me.
Let's see. Special Counsel Robert Hur. So, because Biden did the same thing that they accused Trump of doing, and what Bolton did. Biden did the same thing. Biden had boxes of classified documents, which, by the way, he wasn't the president when he took those boxes. He was the vice president. So the vice president doesn't have the ability to declassify top secret stuff like Trump did. So again, it's not like Trump. Again, this isn't me. This is me showing you how the Justice Department has been politicized by the Democrats first. And now they pretend that never happened. Because Joe Biden did the exact same thing. Here it is. Special Counsel Jack Smith charged Trump with amassing the highly sensitive secrets after his first term and then obstructed government efforts to reclaim them. The case against Bolton resembles in some ways the investigations of both Trump and Joe Biden for their possessing classified documents in their homes. But Special Counsel Robert Hur, great-grandson of Ben Hur, declined to recommend charges against Biden. And you know why? He said a jury wouldn't convict Biden because Biden is demented.
That's treason to say that.
That's rare.
That was before everybody was saying Biden was demented. The guy who was in charge of prosecuting Biden over those classified documents said, I'm not going to prosecute him because the jury's going to say he doesn't even know what he's doing. He's a dumb old man who's demented. Despite tapping Bolton as a top, okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, blah, blah. So in 2020, Bolton wanted to publish a book. But Trump's Department of Justice wanted to block that book because they said it had top secret information in it. The move to halt release of the book failed. But the judge who heard the request said Bolton had gambled with the national security of the United States by proceeding with publication of the book without the final sign-off from government authorities. The judge, who was a Reagan appointee, opined at the time that Bolton had likely published classified materials and could face criminal prosecution.
So they all don't like him. That's how I take this. They all don't like him. All sides of the aisle.
So each of the 18 felony counts carries a maximum penalty of 10 years.
That's almost about 176, 180.
Yep, and FBI, that's exactly right. An
That'd be great.
An FBI log of the search of Bolton's office described finding several trenches of records with classified markings, including some pertaining to weapons of mass destruction and military strikes in Syria.
How much is a tranche, Jimmy?
I don't know what a tranche, but a tranche.
Several tranches?
The indictment attempts to singe Bolton with his own words by quoting public commentary he offered in recent years, condemning officials involved in controversies over cavalier handling of sensitive information, include the investigation into Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server, and a more recent blow-up over Trump's administration's national security officials' use of signal chat to discuss planned military operations. So here, this is from the actual indictment. So I'll read it to you. After Bolton's time as national security advisor ended in 2019, Bolton's personal residence was not authorized to store classified information in physical or electronic format. On or about September 10th of 2019, U.S. government personnel retrieved all classified equipment and marked classified documents that were stored in Bolton's home. During that visit, Bolton was told that he could no longer store classified information at his home. At no point during Bolton's time as NSA advisor or afterwards, including when his home was decommissioned in or about September 2019.
With key important details, we read most of this stuff on the indictment earlier when we was going through it. So Jimmy Dore just taking you through it again for a second time. But remember, we covered this earlier when I read through parts of the important parts about the indictment of him and messaging between him and his daughter, and his wife. He was sending classified classified top secret information to them as diary notes pertaining to the creation of his memoir. So remember, we're going through it a second time through Jimmy Dore's point of reading it, but we went through it earlier for the most part. But I'll link it down below. But yeah, this guy is very careless in how he handled top secret information, and he had the nerve to sit there and criticize Trump and Biden for how they handled classified documents, where he handled classified information very much, in my opinion, far worse than they both did.
did Bolton tell the U.S. government personnel that he had sent national defense and classified information to individuals number 1 and 2, that's his wife and daughter, over commercial email and messaging services, or that such information was stored on personal electronic devices and in personal electronic accounts belonging to or accessible by himself and or his wife or daughter. So that's what he was doing. Let me get back to the rest of this, because this
that would be let's see, let's go actually go look at that one. I don't think I read that one earlier. So that's paragraph 13, as you can see right here. After Bolton's time as National Security Advisor ended on September 10th, 2019, Bolton's personal residence was not authorized to store classified information in physical or electronic format, which I've already said majority throughout this entire stream. He is not allowed to have any information that pertains to like top low class or high class governmental information, because he's no longer the National Security Advisor anymore after he was fired. So he doesn't have an authorization to have access to this information no more. So on or about September 10th, 2019, U.S. government personnel retrieved all classified information and marked classified documents that were stored in Bolton's home, SCIF, during that visit. Bolton was told that he could no longer store classified information at his home. At no point during Bolton's time as National Security Advisor or afterwards, including when his home, SCIF, was decommissioned in or about September 2019, did Bolton tell the U.S. government personnel that he had sent national defense and classified information to individuals who wanted to over commercial email and messaging services, or that such information was stored on personal electronic devices and in personal electronic accounts belonging to or accessible by himself or or individuals wanted to. That's the part that Jimmy Dore is reading over right now, currently speaking. Yeah, so yeah, this is a lot of like carelessness from Bolton's part, and the fact that he had classified information, which I don't mean to beat a dead horse over his head, but like, yes, just to regurgitate this again, he's not National Security Advisor no more. He is not supposed to have access to none of these documentations electronically or physically at all. So he did not give up any of the information that he had in his household back to the government after he was let go as National Security Advisor. He kept a hold of it, and also during his time as National Security Advisor, he was messaging his daughter and wife as diary notes. Basically, this was top secret stuff, information to his daughter and wife pertaining to his memoir that came out in 2020. So yeah, Bolton's entire, like, this whole Bolton case is just like, it's just one screw up after another with this guy. This guy is definitely a numbskull who's most likely is going to face prison time. It's definitely, I don't see any chance of this guy getting out at all. I do not see no chance of this guy getting out of this case. This guy is definitely going down hard.
is pretty interesting. So on or about April 8th in 2018, the day before Bolton officially began his duties as National Security Advisor, Individual 1, which is either his wife or his daughter, created a group chat with Bolton and his wife or daughter on a non-governmental messaging application. Now, that's important because if you're going to have classified information flying around, it's got to be on a governmental messaging service because that's encrypted and it's protected from hacking. Well, he didn't. They were doing it over private email, private messaging. Individual 2 asked the group, why are we using this now, the encryption? To which Individual 1 responds, yup, why not? Bolton then responded, for diary in the future. So he was doing this so he could write a book. On or about April 22nd, 2018, Bolton sent Individuals 1 and 2, again, that's his wife and daughter, via the non-governmental messaging application, a 25-page document which describes information that Bolton learned while National Security Advisor. It's illegal. On or about April 22nd, 2018, Individual 2 sent Bolton and Individual 1 a message that stated, diary finished. Individual 1 also asked Individual 2 whether Individual 2 was going to call tonight, to which Individual 2 responded, am I supposed to? Individual 1 then wrote, diaries take time to write, but phone conversations take less time.
That's true.
On or about July 15, 2018, Individual 2 sent Bolton and Individual 1 a message that stated, do we get a diary today? Individual 1 responded, don't think he can do it on this trip. Bolton later added, too much going on. I've done much on Friday in London because I didn't take many notes and wanted to get it down before I forgot. So this is him writing down classified information that he's going to then share with his wife and daughter on an unsecured messaging app. You can't do that. That's illegal. Even writing down the top classified information and then taking it home is illegal. You can't write it down and then take it home. You can't do that. That's
You
illegal.
certainly can't put it in a book before you get it approved. I know that much. If you look at what I just texted you with Steph from Politico,
no,
everybody in Washington hates John Bolton from 2020. Why did they hate him? A day after excerpts from his bombshell new book emerged excoriating President Donald Trump, the former national security advisor has managed to turn everyone against him. Republicans say he's disgruntled, and Democrats, once buoyed by Bolton's turn against Trump, now say he's unpatriotic for documenting the claims in a book instead of testifying before Congress during Trump's impeachment. So that's why he don't have no friends. His little stupid book pissed off everyone.
On July 23rd, 2018, Bolton sent his wife and daughter a message that said, "More stuff coming." A few minutes
when I said in the jokes.
A few minutes later, he sent them a 24-page document which described information that Bolton learned while national security advisor. Less than 3 hours later, he sent his wife and daughter a follow-up message that stated, "None of which we talk about." In response, his daughter sent a message that said, "Shh."
Yeah.
Shh. That's this right there.
Yeah.
Individual 2, probably his wife, then sent a message that stated, "The only interesting thing is what senior U.S. government officials might have said from foreign language interpreter, which you didn't tell us." Approximately 2 minutes later, individual 1 sent a message in response.
I read that part for you guys earlier. Yeah, that's just, bruh. It gets worse and worse for this guy. The more that Jimmy Dore reads over again.
That stated, "More to come with Cloak and Dagger," or something, so he says.
It's all about Macron's wife's dick, I bet.
Yep, I bet. On September 23rd, 2018, Bolton sent his wife and daughter a 10-page document which contained information that Bolton learned while national security advisor, including information classified up to the top secret SCI levels. He's sending this to his family.
I think it's heartwarming how close they are, though. I mean, nobody likes this guy, but he's not divorced, and his kids would talk to him.
Here it is. There's more to this. At some point between when Bolton left government service in 2019 and July 2021, a cyber actor believed to be associated with the Islamic Republic of Iran hacked his personal email account and gained
All right, that part. Let's go over to here. It would be right here. That's on paragraph 14. At some point between when Bolton left government service in September 2019 and July 2021, a cyber actor believed to be associated with the Islamic Republic of Iran hacked Bolton's personal email account and gained unauthorized access to classified and national defense information in the account, which Bolton had previously emailed to individuals 1 and 2 while he was national security advisor. A representative for Bolton notified the U.S. government of the hack in or about July 2021, but he did not tell the U.S. government that the account contained national defense information, including classified information that Bolton had placed in the account from his time as national security advisor. Nor did Bolton's representative tell the U.S. government that Bolton had shared some of that national defense information, including classified information, with individuals 1 and 2, his daughter and wife, via personal email and a non-governmental messaging application. Yeah. So, yeah, this is, like I said before, carelessness, complete dumbfounded dumbness from this dumb fuck, John Bolton. So, yeah, this guy made such careless mistakes. From a guy who's been in politics for as long as the late 50s. You know, a guy such as this guy right here should know by now to, you know, basically not make stupid mistakes like this that can possibly cost you your freedom, the rest of your life to spend with your wife and your daughter, instead of possibly facing that behind bars. You know, Bolton is many things, and an idiot is definitely one of them. A very, very, very big dumbass idiot is Bolton. That's to describe John Bolton. Guy's a moron, and he's most likely is going to prison. So we're gonna move on right now. We're gonna go over to when John Bolton surrenders himself to the authorities. This happened 3 days ago.
National Security Advisor John Bolton has been indicted and is now the third critic of President Trump to face criminal charges in recent weeks. Retribution is here. Bolton, for his part, was indicted yesterday by a federal grand jury in Maryland. Just moments ago, he arrived at a federal courthouse in Maryland, suburban D.C., where he is expected to surrender to authorities and make an initial court appearance. That's according to 2 senior federal law enforcement sources. You can see him entering the courthouse there just a few moments ago. Bolton faces 18 counts related to the transmission and retention of national defense information. Prosecutors say that Bolton stored diary-like entries about his time in government that included classified information and then shared more than 1,000 pages of that information with 2 family members who did not have security clearances. NBC News has identified them as his wife and daughter. Bolton is denying any wrongdoing, comparing the Trump administration to Joseph Stalin's secret police, who said, "You show me the man, and I'll show you the crime." Joining us now to talk about this and other things, New York Times investigative reporter Michael Schmidt, co-host of The Weeknight on MSNBC, Simone Sanders-Townsend, and MSNBC legal correspondent and former litigator, Lisa Rue. Great panel. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Lisa, starting with you. First, just give us a sense as to what will happen in that courthouse today. John Bolton just entered. But also, there has been and talk us about the actual nature of these charges. There seems to be, per experts we've been speaking to, more of a there than perhaps what we've seen facing Letitia James and James Comey.
Well, let's talk about what's going to happen this morning. We can report, MSNBC can report, that John Bolton is inside the courthouse this morning. He is inside the U.S. Marshal's suite with his lawyer, Abby Lowell, and some of the prosecutors who were present yesterday for the return of the indictment. We expect that he will be processed, which involves fingerprinting and the taking of a picture solely for internal uses. And then he will wait to make an initial appearance before Judge Theodore Chuang of the District of Maryland. We don't know exactly what time that will happen. We don't expect him, however, to be arraigned this morning. That's the process through which somebody enters a plea of guilty or not guilty. That is not expected to happen this morning. In terms of whether or not there's a there, Simone and I were talking about this offset. And this is one of those situations, John, that I would say two things can be true. To quote our colleague Huma Abedin, it's a both and situation. This can be retributive and meritorious at the same time. I was struck in reading this indictment and how many parallels there are to the Trump Mar-a-Lago case. Obviously, John Bolton facing 18 counts of both retaining and distributing national defense information. But one of the things that comes across clearly, the prosecutors clearly want people to read into it, is how many times John Bolton had an opportunity to come clean and return information. That started with a settlement that he reached with the Department of Justice over the publication of his book in early 2021 that obligated him to return any residual classified or national defense information in his possession. That continued in the summer when his team reported to the FBI that he had been hacked through his AOL account by a foreign entity identified as somebody close to the Iranian Republic. And in that situation, they were also not, according to prosecutors, fully forthcoming about the ways in which John Bolton used that AOL account to communicate classified and national defense information to his wife and daughter as he was sending them diary entries, perhaps later to be used in his memoir. There are also places where they say, based on his interviews, that John Bolton fully understood the rules of the road. And they quote sort of prolifically from cable news interviews that he gave in 16 and 17, criticizing Hillary Clinton, and later in 2025, talking about Pete Hegseth and the Signal chat. What's notably missing from that, though, are all the interviews John Bolton did, including with our colleague Ken Delanian in 2022, where he lambasted President Trump for his own handling of classified materials and the cavalierness with which President Trump was sharing classified or otherwise sensitive information with folks.
Yeah. It's so funny, like how this comes full circle for John Bolton, sitting there criticizing other people of something that he was doing he was clearly already doing. It's very, very funny how this comes full circle for the guy that was making the same exact mistake that he was making fun of everyone else for. So as we go right here, so special report, John Bolton pleads not guilty after the indictment.
John Bolton just made his first court appearance, pleading not guilty to charges alleging that he mishandled classified information.
The smarter move would have been to plead guilty. But I mean, hey, it's whatever John wants to do.
It comes after he surrendered to authorities earlier this morning. Just yesterday, Bolton, now a prominent critic of President Trump, was indicted by a federal grand jury. He's charged with 8 counts of transmission of national defense information and 10 counts of unlawful retention of that information, 18 counts in all. Let's go right to our senior legal correspondent, Laura Jarrett. Laura, this first appearance just wrapping up, but we know you have a not guilty plea. What else are we learning this
morning? Yeah, and that would be as expected, Joe, as the former national security advisor has maintained all along that he never put any classified information in his book, the thing that's at issue here, and that he never really engaged in any wrongdoing at all. He and his attorneys have maintained that he got waivers from the national security advisors and was told that his book was good to go. Obviously, the government disputes that. He's in court right now, as we understand it. You just saw a video of him there walking in to make his first appearance today. Before that first appearance in court, Joe, he had to go through all the routine processing just like any other defendant, as we've seen so many times before. You have to go in, you have to submit all of your data, you have to take your fingerprints, you have to get a mugshot, all of those things, sort of surreal moment, if you will, to have someone who is at the highest levels of U.S. government going in now as a criminal defendant, just like anybody else, subjected to some of that routine processing. Typically, at a hearing like this, in your first appearance, there'll be discussions around discovery. That's the information, the evidence that the government has amassed there, that the defense is certainly going to want to get their hands on as they sort of start to mount their case and understand just what the government has in store here. Remember the grand jury process, the grand jury, the one that actually indicted him, entirely secret, Joe. The defense is not there. The defense attorneys are not there. They have no idea what went before that grand jury, but we have now gotten a lot more information than we had the day before, given this lengthy indictment. And we should mention, this indictment is chock full of information that we just didn't have a full appreciation before. All of the documents, all of the more than 1,000 pages prosecutors say they got their hands on that Bolton was wrongfully, in their view, sharing with 2 family members, essentially using them as sort of quasi-editors before he eventually published a manuscript documenting his time in the White House, Joe. So we wait to see what other information comes out of court there. But again, the former National Security John Bolton pleading not guilty right now, Joe.
And we'll wait to see if we find out a trial date out of this hearing as well. Laura, remind us how these charges seem to be more serious than the ones facing some other Trump adversaries who've recently been indicted, including former FBI Director James Comey and the current New York Attorney General Letitia James.
Yeah, so it's worth noting here, Joe, the case of James and Comey were run out of the Eastern District of Virginia by a political appointee, someone who formerly served as the president's defense counsel, who has no experience as a prosecutor. Her name is Lindsay Halligan. And if you look at the charging papers, it's signed just by Lindsay Halligan, presumably because no other career prosecutors in the office wanted to participate. In the case of John Bolton, it's a very different story. You see a litany of national security career people, career prosecutors in the office of Maryland, which has a lot of experience with these types of cases. And so that's one thing that distinguishes it. Also, just how much information is contained in this indictment. It's what's known as a speaking indictment, Joe. It tells a story, whereas the one for both Letitia James and for Comey, it's much more bare bones. It's hard to know exactly what prosecutors have there. They don't have to reveal everything in the indictment, but certainly they're telling a very detailed story when it comes to Bolton. Also worth noting here what Bolton has been charged with, both the retention of classified information, so he took stuff home that he wasn't supposed to have, and the dissemination, the transmission of classified information. Very serious charges. We've all become very well acquainted with classified document cases in recent years. You think back to President Biden, President Trump, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Obviously, Biden and Clinton not charged. Trump was, but we should know what Trump was charged with. One of the things is the same thing that Bolton was, the retention of classified information by someone who was allowed to have it, but wasn't supposed to have it in the way that they were. But the distinction here, Joe, is that Trump was not charged with transmitting that classified information in the way that Bolton is, Joe.
It's an issue that has surfaced many times over the past few years. We should note John Bolton pleading not guilty today, but he was proactively speaking out ahead of this indictment, expecting it might be coming. What are some of the things we've heard him say about this?
Yeah, you remember, this was an investigation that stretches back years. In the waning years of the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, Joe, the Justice Department was interested in whether he had wrongfully divulged classified information in his book. It's called The Room Where It Happened. It's chock full of scathing information about Trump and things that he observed while in the White House. And the Justice Department wondered whether he had gotten his hands on classified information and used it in a wrong way, perhaps sharing draft manuscripts with people who weren't supposed to have it. That starts under the first Trump administration. Joe, that investigation actually continued into the Biden administration. So it crossed administrations, and the Biden administration closed it. Now, we're going to need to do some more understanding about why they closed it, but they closed it. Then all of a sudden, you see the FBI raiding his home and his office just this last summer, and it was sort of our first tip to the idea, oh, this investigation is back, and it's now hot, given that they got a warrant from a judge. You have to get a judge to sign off on that. And so obviously the government had probable cause to believe that a crime had been committed when they went into his home and office. You remember, you see them carrying out boxes, they seize phones, they seize computers. Clearly, some of the material that they used to serve as the basis for this latest indictment, Joe.
All right, Laura, we're going to ask you to stand by in case we do learn some more information out of that courthouse. Let's bring in White House correspondent Monica Alba right now. Monica, President Trump was asked about this indictment yesterday, calling Bolton a bad guy. Over these past couple days, what have we heard from the White House and the Trump administration?
Yeah, it's really notable, Joe, this coming today and yesterday when the president was informed about this happening in real time. He said that he didn't know about it in that moment, but he did comment more generally on his former national security advisor, saying, quote, that he was a bad guy and that this is just, quote, the way it goes. Remember that this is somebody who served for the first Trump administration for about 17 months from 2018 to 2019 before President Trump decided to let him go. At the time, John Bolton had said that he had offered his resignation, so there was some dispute about how he left the first administration, but the president has made no secret of his feelings about him in the last couple of years. And certainly in the last couple of months, he has talked about him. And remember that just weeks right after he took office here in this second term, he stripped John Bolton of his security detail and of his security clearance. So those were among some of the first moves.
Yeah, Trump definitely did him in right now, stripping him of his security details. Like, remember, John Bolton's been a very adamant Trump critic ever since his firing as national security advisor. I mean, every time Trump is blundered something or did something fucked up, Bolton's always on his ass. He's going straight to CNN, just straight to complain about what Trump did this, Trump did that, you know. And then obviously his memoir that came out, What Really Happened. Make sure I get his memoir name right. The Room Where It Happened, actually. My bad. I haven't read the book yet. I'm considering picking it up and reading it, but The Room Where It Happened is John Bolton's memoir of where he talks about his time as under the Trump administration, and basically him just criticizing the president in his book too as well. He files up with more details in that book. But yeah, this is just a big blunder on John Bolton's part. We're gonna continue to listen on a little bit more, and then I'm going to close out right here. It's going to be a good 3-hour stream. I guess I'll be back tomorrow. We're going to cover the Venezuela because they just bombed their 8th boat not too long ago while I was on stream, and then we're going to cover Israel and the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas tomorrow.
Trump made this time around that were a clear indication of his feelings about him. And John Bolton, in his recent comments when he had been interviewed leading up to this indictment, said that he believed that Donald Trump was carrying out, quote, a retribution presidency. And this comes, of course, Joe, against the backdrop of, in the last couple of weeks, we have seen President Trump name people that he believes his Department of Justice should go after, should potentially launch criminal investigations against or into. We have seen that come to fruition in a couple of cases, but we know that there are other names that the president has even mentioned. And in a message that was meant to be private to his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, he did talk about the fact that some people he wanted investigated had not happened as quickly as he liked and wanted to stress the urgency of the situation. Now, John Bolton was not mentioned among those names, but we know there have certainly been others, including former FBI Director James Comey, the New York Attorney General Letitia James, and California Senator Adam Schiff that he has talked about, and that we have seen some action, of course, when it comes to Comey and when it comes to James in particular, not yet to California Senator Adam Schiff. But just this week, the president did appear with his Attorney General and with the FBI Director in an event where he was naming other people and where he continues to stress that people that he believes did things that were illegal, that the president has said are illegal, he wants to see some kind of action from his Department of Justice. But John Bolton falls into the category of somebody who was once an ally and, of course, then became a very outspoken critic who was not shy at all about saying that he does believe this is specifically the president trying to get revenge on him for the role that he played over the last couple of years and what he has said since leaving the White House. Joe.
And Monica, you mentioned that the president put out this very sort of public note, whether it was accidental, as he says, basically urging 3 people to be charged. 2 of them have been charged in recent weeks. As you mentioned, Senator Schiff has not been charged with anything. Were we seeing the same type of public pressure campaign from President Trump when it specifically came to John Bolton?
Well, that's what's kind of interesting because he hadn't been included in these specific categories. And when he has been really direct to mention people, he's talked about some others who served both in the Biden administration. And even he has talked about the potential for the DOJ to look at former FBI Director Christopher Wray, who is somebody who President Trump had worked with and had appointed years ago. So there are other people that he had talked about, but he hadn't specifically included John Bolton in the same way that we have seen the mention of some of these other perceived political opponents, certainly that the president does spend a fair amount of time talking about. But again, when we learned originally that those materials had been removed from John Bolton's home, the president was asked specifically if he had been given a heads up about that. He said he didn't know about that. But interestingly, Joe, at the time he said, if I wanted to get involved, I could. And if I wanted to be the one who was directing some of that, he says he could, but that in this instance, he was not.
And noteworthy, we did hear from both the Attorney General and the FBI Director about this indictment yesterday, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this has been a moment where we have seen both the Attorney General and FBI Director and others involved in this really try to talk about this in the context of no one is above the law and that they will continue to pursue these kinds of investigations and bring potential criminal charges, they say, against anybody who, in their view, could jeopardize national security. And as you see there, specifically, Attorney General Pam Bondi said the law applies to everyone and justice never sleeps. And we know, Joe, that she is here very often. This is somebody who is speaking with the president constantly, who is here for many different events. Again, we just saw her a couple of days ago in that announcement with the president and the FBI Director about their so-called crime crackdown across the nation, that they are in constant contact. And again, the president has been extremely clear with his directives about who he would like to see investigated and potentially criminally charged.
And because of that, we've certainly heard some critics, especially when it comes to Comey, when it comes to Letitia James, who've wondered if these are politically motivated. I mean, have Democrats been speaking out a lot about this?
Certainly, they have definitely raised these concerns, and they point to the fact that this shouldn't really come as a surprise to many people because it is something that the president telegraphed that he might do if he won a second term. He used to talk all the time on the campaign trail about the idea that this term could be focused, could be centered on retribution, on revenge. And remember that the FBI Director, Kash Patel, had a so-called enemies list with a bunch of different names appearing on it. The FBI Director, for his part, has tried to distance himself from that, saying that that is not an accurate portrayal of that. But we know that there had been many, many different discussions that perhaps would take place behind the scenes, but that in this moment, in this administration, and the very little separation you see, the total eroding and erasure of a line between the White House and the Department of Justice, it's something that they have talked about and really put out publicly and in the open, and Democrats and critics have certainly raised that as something they've taken issue with.
All right, Monica Alba, thank you so much. Let's get right back to our senior legal correspondent, Laura Jarrett. Laura, we are getting some more information out of the courtroom, including conditions of release and some future court dates. What are we learning?
Yeah, remember, we can't have any cameras, unfortunately, in a federal courthouse, Joe, and so we're relying on our producers. They're in the room who, of course, as we reported, that Bolton has pled not guilty to all 18 counts there. They're also getting information about how much punishment he would be facing if convicted. We're obviously a long way away from trial, but obviously he's facing a very serious set of charges here, which include 10 years in custody, a $250,000 fine per count, so that's times 18, and 3 years of special release. Of course, punishment entirely up to the judge in this case, and we're obviously, again, a far ways away from trial as he's pled not guilty and denies any wrongdoing here. We should also mention that his lawyer, Abby Lowell, has taken custody of Bolton's passport, and there would be some travel restrictions on him. That's done, of course, to show that he's not a flight risk. They don't need to put any restraints on him. He's obviously going home today. He hasn't been taken into custody. He wasn't arrested. He voluntarily turned himself in. And so all of these sort of conditions of release that you see, fairly typical here, Joe. We should mention they'll be back in court next month. This is just the first appearance, the first of what is going to be a very long road. They're going to have a bunch of pretrial motions where they'll try, I would imagine, to get this case thrown out, as we have seen in other cases, the case of James Comey, as you remember, another foe of the president trying to similarly get his case tossed out. And so they'll all be back in court mid next month, Joe.
And I know the Comey case is set to go to trial fairly quickly. This one could take a little longer.
Classified documents, always a tricky issue. It involves a complicated set of procedures and issues. The judge may need to take his time on this one, Joe.
All right, Laura Jarrett, good to have you with us. Thank you so much. And we'll have coverage ahead right here on NBC News Now and online.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news.
And that's Letitia James and James I'm thinking about James Comey. John Bolton indictments today, covered right now on Tonight in America. That is the show right now, everyone. That is the show. Okay, again, we have new Patreon. I'm going to advertise it tonight. I'm going to create an advertisement video. I'm going to post it up. I'm not going to stream that one tomorrow. I'm going to post it up tomorrow. Look forward to that. And tomorrow we're going to cover Venezuela and the Israel-Hamas ceasefire and give my thoughts if it's going to hold. There's a 90% chance it's not. After there's a recent bombing that happened this Sunday, I don't believe it's going to hold. But yeah, that is today's show. Make sure you like the video, subscribe. Let me know how you guys enjoyed everything, and I will see you guys tomorrow. If you like the video, leave a comment, whatever. I'll see you guys tomorrow.